The chains were supposed to drain her. That's what Black Fang Prison was built for, to swallow wolves whole and spit out hollow shells. To strip away everything that made them predator, pack, power. The bars were forged from moonstone, the walls soaked in wolfsbane extract so potent that most prisoners couldn't even shift without collapsing into convulsions. The air itself tasted like rot and resignation. Ariel had been here 3 months. And tonight, under the rising crescent moon, something inside her was waking up. She pressed her spine against the cold stone wall of her cell, hands trembling as she stared down at her palms. The veins beneath her skin glowed faint silver, pulsing in rhythm with her heartbeat. It shouldn't be possible. Every other wolf in this forsaken place was barely alive, eyes dull, movements sluggish, their inner beasts so starved they'd gone silent. But hers? Hers was screaming. The wolf inside her clawed at her ribs, demanding release, demanding blood, demanding justice. Ariel clenched her fists until her nails bit into her palms, forcing the light beneath her skin to dim. If the guards saw this, if anyone saw this, they would kill her. Not imprison her. Not question her. They would execute her on sight. Because wolves like her weren't supposed to exist anymore. Outside her cell, footsteps echoed down the corridor, heavy boots on stone, the jangle of keys, the low murmur of guards changing shifts. Ariel's breath hitched. She tilted her head back against the wall and closed her eyes, forcing her body to go limp, her face to go blank. She'd learned how to survive here, be invisible, be broken, be forgettable. Be the girl everyone thought deserved this. The guard paused at her cell door, peering through the bars with eyes that held nothing but contempt. He was young, maybe 25, with the build of someone who'd never seen real combat. His uniform was too clean. His hands too steady. He'd probably volunteered for this post because it was easy, watching over the discarded, the damned, the wolves nobody cared about. Still breathing, traitor, he sneered. Ariel didn't respond. She'd stopped responding weeks ago. He spat through the bars, the glob landing inches from her bare feet, then moved on. She waited until his footsteps faded completely before she let herself breathe again. Traitor. The word carved itself deeper into her chest every time she heard it. But the truth was so much worse than the lie they all believed. She wasn't a traitor. She was the scapegoat. It had happened on the night of the Moon Ascension, the most sacred night in pack tradition, when wolves renewed their bonds and pledged loyalty to their alpha king. Ariel had been preparing for her own ascension ceremony, the one that would officially recognize her as heir to her family's bloodline, when the accusations began. Stolen artifacts. Forbidden texts. Plans to overthrow the Alpha Council. Evidence planted in her chambers. Witnesses who swore they'd seen her sneaking through restricted archives. Letters written in her handwriting that she'd never penned. The trial lasted less than an hour. Her father hadn't even looked at her. Her mother had wept, but said nothing in her defense. And Seraphine? Her younger sister had stood beside the Alpha Council with tears streaming down her face, whispering apologies that everyone believed were genuine. "I'm so sorry, Ari," Seraphine had sobbed, clutching the arm of Alpha King Noah Blackthorn himself. "I never thought you'd go this far. I tried to stop you. I tried." Noah's expression had been carved from granite. Cold. Unyielding. Final. "Take her to Black Fang," he'd ordered. "Let the moon judge her there." No one argued. No one questioned. The Alpha King's word was law. And just like that, Ariel ceased to exist. Within a week, Seraphine had stepped seamlessly into her life. Took her name at public gatherings. Wore her ceremonial cloak. Stood at Noah's side during pack assemblies. The mate bond that should have been Ariel's, the one she'd felt pulling at her soul since the moment she'd met Noah's eyes across the bonfire 2 years ago, had somehow transferred to her sister. Or so everyone believed. But Ariel knew the truth. You can't steal a mate bond. It's written in the soul, etched into destiny by the moon herself. And yet Seraphine had done exactly that, through blood magic, through forbidden rituals, through a betrayal so complete that it had rewritten reality itself. And the worst part? No one even remembered Ariel had existed in the first place. A sudden clang of metal jolted her from her thoughts. The prison alarm, a sound that only rang when something had gone catastrophically wrong. Ariel's eyes snapped open. Shouts erupted from the upper levels, followed by the thunder of running footsteps and the unmistakable sound of fighting. Her wolf surged forward, instinct screaming danger. She pushed herself to her feet, legs shaking from malnutrition and weeks of enforced stillness. The silver glow beneath her skin intensified, spreading up her arms like veins of moonlight. Her senses sharpened. She could smell blood now, fresh and metallic. Could hear the screams of guards, the roars of prisoners breaking free. A riot. Or something worse. The corridor outside her cell erupted into chaos. Prisoners poured out of open cells, their faces twisted with rage and desperation. Some were shifting, incomplete, agonizing transformations that left them caught between human and wolf, their bodies rejecting the change even as they forced it through sheer will. One of them slammed against her cell door, face pressed against the bars. His eyes were wild, pupils blown wide. "They're coming," he rasped. "Shadow beasts. They're slaughtering everyone. Shadow beasts." Ariel's blood went cold. They were creatures of old magic, born from corrupted wolf souls and dark rituals. They shouldn't exist, not anymore, not since the Purge Wars 2 centuries ago when the Alpha Council had supposedly eradicated every trace of shadow magic from Pact territories. But if they were here now in Black Fang Prison, someone had summoned them. Someone had weaponized them. Someone wanted every prisoner in this place dead. The wolf inside Ariel roared. Not fear this time, fury. She grabbed the bars of her cell, and the moonstone metal burned against her palms. Pain lanced through her hands, but she didn't let go. Instead, she channeled everything she'd been suppressing for 3 months, all the rage, the grief, the desperate need to survive, and pushed it into her grip. The silver veins in her arms blazed like liquid starlight. The moonstone began to crack. It shouldn't work. Moonstone was specifically designed to neutralize wolf magic, to render them powerless. But whatever was waking inside Ariel wasn't normal wolf magic. It was older, deeper, something that predated the pack system itself. The bars shattered. Ariel stumbled forward into the corridor, breathing hard, staring at her glowing hands in shock. Behind her, the remains of the moonstone bars sparked and sizzled, melting into slag. What the hell was she? No time to process. The screams were getting closer, and beneath them, she could hear something else, a low, guttural growling that made her hindbrain scream predator, run, hide. Shadow beasts didn't just kill. They consumed. Body and soul. Ariel turned and ran. The prison was a labyrinth of stone corridors and twisting staircases, designed to disorient and trap. But Ariel's instincts guided her left, right, up, down, following some internal compass she didn't understand. The silver glow beneath her skin pulsed brighter with each turn, as if responding to something ahead. She burst through a doorway and found herself in the central courtyard. And froze. The sky above was wrong. The moon hung fat and full, impossible. It had been a crescent just hours ago, and its light bled silver across everything it touched. The courtyard was littered with bodies, prisoners and guards alike, torn apart with brutal efficiency. And standing in the center of the carnage were 3 shadow beasts. They looked like wolves, if wolves had been built from smoke and malice. Their forms shifted and rippled, never quite solid, with eyes that burned red as dying coals. One of them lifted its head, nostrils flaring, and locked its gaze directly on Ariel. It smiled. Then it lunged. Ariel's body moved before her mind could catch up. She dropped low, rolling beneath snapping jaws, and came up running. Her hands hit the ground and silver light exploded outward, forming a barrier between her and the beasts. They slammed into it and recoiled, snarling. She didn't wait to see if it would hold. She ran for the far wall, where a collapsed section of stone created a gap just wide enough to squeeze through. Behind her, the shadow beasts howled, a sound that resonated not in her ears, but in her bones, in her soul. Ariel dove through the gap and tumbled down a steep embankment, crashing through underbrush and thorns. Pain bloomed across her skin, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop, her wolf driving her forward with single-minded desperation. The forest. If she could reach the forest, she could disappear. Trees rose around her like ancient sentinels, their branches blocking out the impossible moon. Ariel's lungs burned, her legs screamed, but she pushed harder, faster, until a figure stepped out from behind a massive oak directly in her path. Ariel tried to skid to a stop and failed, momentum carrying her forward. She crashed into a solid chest, strong hands catching her shoulders before she could fall. And then she looked up, into eyes the color of storm clouds and winter steel. Alpha King Noah Blackthorn stared down at her, his expression unreadable. He was exactly as she remembered, tall, broad-shouldered, with sharp features that could have been carved from marble. Power radiated from him like heat, the unmistakable presence of a born alpha. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, his ceremonial jacket missing, as if he'd come here in a hurry. But it was his eyes that held her frozen. Because she saw recognition there. Not confusion. Not surprise. Recognition. Ariel, he said, and his voice was rough, layered with something that sounded like relief and anguish twisted together. I've been looking for you. The mate bond snapped into place between them like a physical thing, a golden thread that tied her soul to his, burning so bright it hurt. It had always been there, dormant, waiting. But now it roared to life with devastating intensity. And in that moment, Ariel realized three impossible things at once. The mate bond with Seraphine was fake. It had always been fake. No one knew who she really was. And he'd come to Blackfang Prison to find her. Before we continue this journey, if stories like this set your soul on fire, hit that subscribe button for Shayla's Romance Library. Because here, we don't just tell stories. We live them. Time fractured. The forest, the blood on her skin, the distant howls of shadow beasts, all of it fell away until there was only this. Noah Blackthorn standing in front of her, hands still gripping her shoulders, and the mate bond burning like a brand between them. Ariel's wolf surged forward, desperate and furious and confused. Every instinct screamed at her to lean into his touch, to trust the bond, to collapse into the safety his presence promised. But her human mind, the part that had survived 3 months of hell, yanked her back to reality. This was the man who'd condemned her. The man who'd sent her to rot in Blackfang without a second thought. The man who was mated to her sister. She wrenched herself backward, stumbling out of his grip. Her hands came up defensively, silver light flickering beneath her skin like a warning. Don't touch me. Noah's jaw tightened, but he didn't move closer. His eyes tracked every inch of her, the torn prison uniform hanging off her frame, the bruises mottling her arms, the way she swayed on her feet like she might collapse at any moment. Something dark and violent flickered across his face. You're hurt, he said, and it wasn't a question. I'm alive, Ariel shot back. Her voice came out hoarse, damaged from weeks of screaming into the void of her cell. No thanks to you. The words landed like a physical blow. Noah flinched, his hands curling into fists at his sides. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The forest around them was too quiet, the kind of silence that meant predators were near, watching, waiting. Then Noah took a careful step forward, moving like he was approaching a wounded animal. Ariel, I need you to listen to me. Why? The laugh that tore from her throat was jagged, broken. So you can explain why you threw me away? Why you didn't even question the evidence? Why you let them erase me like I never existed? Because I didn't have a choice. The words exploded out of him, raw and ragged. Noah's carefully controlled mask cracked, revealing something underneath that looked like anguish. His chest heaved, storm gray eyes blazing with an intensity that made Ariel's breath catch. The Alpha Council came to me with evidence I couldn't refute, he continued, voice dropping to something quieter but no less fierce. Witnesses, documents, artifacts found in your chambers. They said you were planning a coup, that you'd been studying forbidden magic, that you were a threat to every pack under my rule. And you believed them. I didn't want to. Noah's hands flexed at his sides, like he was physically restraining himself from reaching for her. Everything in me screamed that it was wrong. The mate bond. He stopped, shook his head. I felt it, Ariel. Even then. That pull between us, the one that said you were mine, that I was supposed to protect you. But the evidence was irrefutable, and the council demanded justice. Ariel's throat tightened. So you chose them over me. I chose to keep you alive. The statement hung in the air between them. Noah took another step closer, and this time Ariel didn't back away. Couldn't. Because there was something in his expression that looked like truth, and she was so desperate for answers that she'd risk getting close enough to hear them. Black Phone Prison was the only option they'd accept, Noah said quietly. The council wanted you executed immediately. Public trial. Ceremonial beheading, your name struck from every record. They were calling for blood, Ariel. Your blood. Her hands started shaking. She remembered the trial, remembered the cold fury in the council members' eyes, the way they looked at her like she was already dead. I bargained with them, Noah continued. Told them that the moon should judge you first. That if you were truly guilty, Black Fong would break you, and if you were innocent, you'd survive until I could uncover the truth. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I've spent 3 months tearing apart every piece of evidence, questioning every witness, following every thread that didn't make sense. And? Ariel's voice cracked. What did you find? Noah's expression turned deadly. That everything, every single piece of evidence, was manufactured. The witnesses were paid off or magically compelled. The artifacts were planted. The documents were forgeries so sophisticated it took me weeks to detect the spell work. He paused, something dark and furious crossing his face. And the person behind all of it is the one person I should have suspected from the beginning. Ariel already knew. Had known from the moment Seraphine stepped into her life without hesitation. But hearing Noah say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. Seraphine, she whispered. Noah nodded, jaw clenched so tight she could see the muscle jumping. Your sister orchestrated everything. The false evidence, the trial, your imprisonment. She wanted you gone, Ariel. Not just removed from power, erased completely. The silver light beneath Ariel's skin flared brighter, responding to the surge of emotion threatening to overwhelm her. Rage and grief tangled together until she couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Why? The word came out broken. I never did anything to her. I protected her, taught her everything I knew, loved her. Because you're dangerous. Ariel's head snapped up. Noah was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, part awe, part wariness, part something else entirely. I don't understand, she said. Noah's gaze dropped to her hands, where silver light pulsed just beneath her skin. That power you're barely containing right now? The reason Black Fang's moonstone couldn't drain you, the reason you're getting stronger instead of weaker. He looked back at her face. You're not just a wolf, Ariel. You're something the Alpha Council thought they'd hunted to extinction 2 centuries ago. Her heart stopped. What are you talking about? You're Linearii. The word hit her like a physical blow. Ariel staggered backward, shaking her head. No, that's impossible. The Linearii are extinct. They were wiped out during the Purge Wars. Everyone knows that. Everyone knows what the Alpha Council wanted them to know. Noah's voice was gentle but firm. The Linearii weren't destroyed because they were evil, Ariel. They were destroyed because they were powerful. Too powerful. They could challenge Alpha authority, could rewrite pact bonds, could reshape the very structure of our world. He moved closer, and this time when he reached for her, Ariel didn't pull away. His fingers were warm against her trembling hands, grounding her even as her entire understanding of herself crumbled. The council called them the Moon's executioners, Noah continued quietly. Because a fully awakened Lunarii had the power to either crown an Alpha King or destroy one. Ariel's mind reeled. She thought about her childhood, the way her parents had always been so careful about her training, the private lessons they'd insisted on, the way her mother would sometimes look at her with an expression caught between pride and fear. They'd known. Her parents had known what she was, and they'd hidden it. Sealed it. Kept it secret even from her. Until Seraphine found out. She discovered the truth, Ariel said, the pieces clicking into place. That's why she did this. Not because she wanted my position or my life. Because she wanted to make sure your power never awakened, Noah finished. And Blackfang Prison, with its moonstone walls and wolfsbane atmosphere, should have suppressed it permanently. But it didn't. No, Noah's grip on her hands tightened. It did the opposite. Every night you spent in that place, surrounded by moonstone, bathed in the light of the full moon, he stopped, searching her face. You can feel it, can't you? The power building inside you, getting stronger every time the moon rises. Ariel nodded slowly. She'd thought she was going insane these past weeks, feeling her wolf grow more powerful instead of fading. But it wasn't insanity. It was awakening. A howl split the night, too close, too loud. The shadow beasts. They'd found her trail. Noah's entire demeanor changed in an instant. The vulnerable, conflicted man disappeared, replaced by the Alpha King, cold, efficient, lethal. He pulled Ariel against his chest with one arm while his other hand went to the blade at his hip. We need to move, he said. Now. But Ariel planted her feet, pushing back enough to meet his eyes. Why did you come here? To Blackfang tonight, in the middle of a shadow beast attack? You said you've been looking for me. Because the mate bond wouldn't let me stay away any longer. The admission came out rough, almost angry. 3 months, Ariel. 3 months of pretending to be bonded to your sister while every instinct I had screamed that she was wrong, that the bond was fake, that my true mate was suffering somewhere I couldn't reach her. His free hand came up to cup her face, thumb brushing across her cheekbone with devastating gentleness. I felt you calling to me, Noah whispered. Every night, through the bond, I felt your pain and your rage and your determination to survive. And tonight, when the bond suddenly flared so bright it nearly brought me to my knees, I knew something had changed. That you were either awakening or dying. Ariel's breath caught. So you came. I commandeered a transport, flew here alone without telling the council or my guards, and arrived just in time to see Blackfang's walls collapse and shadow beasts pouring through the breach. His jaw tightened. Someone set this up. Someone wanted to make sure that if your power did awaken, you wouldn't survive long enough to use it. Another howl, closer now. The trees around them rustled, shadows moving between the trunks with predatory intent. Noah's arm tightened around her waist. I'm getting you out of here. I have a safe house 2 miles north, warded against tracking magic. We'll go there, let you recover, and then... And then what? Ariel demanded. You can't just hide me, Noah. Seraphine is standing beside you as your mate in front of the entire pack. The council thinks I'm a traitor. And now you're telling me I'm something they tried to genocide out of existence. The hysteria was creeping into her voice, but she couldn't stop it. What exactly is your plan here? Noah's eyes blazed. My plan is to keep you alive long enough to reclaim everything that was stolen from you. Your name, your power, your place at my side. He leaned down until his forehead nearly touched hers, voice dropping to something fierce and possessive. You are my true mate, Ariel. Not Seraphine. The bond one feel with you is real, the only real thing in a court full of lies. And I don't care what it costs or who I have to fight. I'm not losing you again. The words crashed through every defense Ariel had built. For 3 months, she'd told herself she was alone. Abandoned. Forgotten. But Noah had been fighting for her all along. The mate bond between them pulsed, and this time Ariel let herself feel it fully. Let herself acknowledge the connection that tied her soul to his, the recognition that went deeper than logic or reason. Her wolf had known from the first moment their eyes met across that bonfire 2 years ago. He was hers. She was his. Everything else was just obstacles in the way. A shadow beast burst through the tree line, all smoke and malice and burning red eyes. Noah spun, putting himself between it and Ariel, blade singing as it left its sheath. But Ariel was done hiding, done running, done being the broken girl everyone expected her to be. Silver light exploded from her palms, forming a spear of pure moonlight. She didn't know how she did it, didn't understand the mechanics of the power flowing through her veins. But instinct guided her hand as she hurled the spear forward. It struck the shadow beast's center mass and detonated. The creature didn't just die, it disintegrated, torn apart by light so bright it left after images burned into Ariel's vision. The other shadow beasts that had been creeping closer recoiled, their forms flickering like candle flames in a storm. Then they turned and fled. Silence crashed down over the forest. Noah slowly turned to face her, blade still in hand, expression caught somewhere between shock and something that looked like reverence. His eyes tracked the silver light still dancing across her skin, the way her hair seemed to float in an invisible wind, the power that thrummed in the air around her. "Linearii," he breathed. Ariel looked down at her hands, at the light that was already fading back beneath her skin. She felt different. Stronger. Like something that had been sleeping her entire life had finally opened its eyes. And it was terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. She looked back up at Noah. What happens now? He sheathed his blade and closed the distance between them in 2 strides. This time when he reached for her, she went willingly, letting him pull her into an embrace that felt like coming home. "Now," Noah said against her hair, "I take you somewhere safe. I teach you how to control your power. And then we go back to the capital and tear down every lie Seraphine has built." He pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "But first, you need to know something." Ariel waited. "The mate bond with your sister? The one everyone believes is real." Noah's expression turned grim. "It's not just fake, it's blood magic. Dark, forbidden magic that requires constant reinforcement. Seraphine has been using stolen Linearii blood to maintain the illusion." The implication hit her like a fist to the gut. "Linearii blood. My blood." Noah nodded. "The artifacts they claimed you stole? They were Linearii relics from your bloodline. Seraphine didn't frame you just to get rid of you. She framed you so she could take everything that made you powerful and use it for herself." Ariel's rage crystallized into something cold and sharp. Her sister hadn't just betrayed her. Seraphine had been slowly bleeding her power away, piece by piece, while wearing her face. "I'm going to kill her," Ariel said quietly. "Not yet." Noah's hand came up to cup her face, forcing her to look at him. "Right now, Seraphine thinks you're dead or powerless. She thinks the shadow beast attack will finish what she started. That's our advantage." His thumb brushed her cheek. "Let her think she won. Let her get comfortable. And when she finally realizes the truth, that her discarded sister is coming for everything she stole, it'll be too late." Ariel stared into storm-gray eyes and saw her own fury reflected back at her. They would burn Seraphine's lies to the ground. Together. The safe house was nothing like Ariel expected. She'd imagined something crude, a hunter's cabin, maybe, or an abandoned outpost with bare walls and a single cot. Instead, Noah led her to a cottage hidden so deep in the forest that even the moonlight seemed reluctant to penetrate the canopy overhead. Wards hummed in the air around it, invisible but tangible, like walking through layers of silk. Inside, the space was warm. A fire already burned in the hearth, as if the house itself had been waiting for them. Soft rugs covered darkwood floors, and the furniture looked lived in, comfortable. Not a hideout. A home. "How long have you had this place?" Ariel asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Speaking louder felt wrong somehow, like it might shatter whatever fragile safety these walls offered. Noah closed the door behind them and engaged 3 separate locks: mundane metal, magical seal, and something else that made the air shimmer. 2 years. Since the night I first met you. Ariel turned to stare at him. What? He moved past her toward a cabinet, pulling out supplies, bandages, salves, a pitcher of water. His movements were efficient, practiced, like he'd done this before. The bonfire celebration. You were standing on the edge of the gathering, watching the flames like they held answers to questions you hadn't asked yet. He glanced at her, something soft and broken in his expression. The mate bond hit me so hard I nearly shifted right there in front of everyone. The memory surfaced, sharp and painful. She'd felt it too, that sudden, overwhelming pull toward a man she'd never spoken to. Alpha King Noah Blackthorn, standing across the fire with authority radiating from every line of his body. Their eyes had met, and the world had narrowed to just that moment. Then Seraphine had appeared at Ariel's side, threading her arm through hers, chattering about something meaningless. And when Ariel looked back, Noah was gone. I thought I imagined it, Ariel admitted. The bond. I thought maybe I'd built it up in my head because you were the Alpha King and I was just the strongest wolf I'd ever encountered, Noah interrupted. He set the supplies on a low table and finally looked at her fully. Even then, before your power awakened, I could feel it in you. Something ancient and powerful, barely contained beneath your skin. It called to something in me that had nothing to do with being Alpha King and everything to do with being yours. The words should have felt good. Validating. But all Ariel could think about was what came after that night. Then why didn't you claim me? The question came out harder than she intended. If you felt the bond, if you knew I was your mate, why did you let 2 years pass without saying anything? Noah's jaw tightened. Because claiming you would have painted a target on your back. The Alpha Council was already suspicious of your family's bloodline. Your father held too much influence, your mother's connections ran too deep. And you, he paused, choosing his words carefully. You were too powerful, too intelligent, too unwilling to play political games. They saw you as a threat. So you stayed away to protect me. The bitterness in Ariel's voice was sharp enough to cut. I stayed away because I was trying to build enough political capital to make claiming you safe, Noah shot back. I was dismantling alliances, calling in favors, quietly removing council members who would oppose our bond. It was supposed to take 1 more year. Just 1 more year, and I would have had enough support to make you my queen without triggering a civil war. Ariel's hands curled into fists. But Seraphine didn't give us that year. No, Noah's expression turned dark. She moved 3 months before I was ready. Fed the council exactly the evidence they needed to demand your execution, forced my hand before I could protect you. And when I bargained for your imprisonment instead, she volunteered to step into your role. To help the family through the scandal, she said. To prove not all of your bloodline was corrupt. The calculated cruelty of it stole Ariel's breath. Her sister had played everyone perfectly, the grieving sibling, the loyal pack member, the woman willing to sacrifice her own comfort to serve her Alpha King. How did she fake the mate bond? Ariel asked. Noah moved to the fireplace, staring into the flames like they might hold answers. Blood magic, like I said. But not just any blood magic, Lunarii blood magic. Your family's grimoire, the one they claimed you stole, contained rituals that the council thought were lost. Seraphine found them, studied them, and used your own power against you. He turned back to face her, and the firelight cast shadows across his features that made him look older, wearier. The ritual requires a sacrifice, Noah continued quietly. Something precious from both parties. From me, she took a vial of blood without my knowledge, probably during a council meeting where refreshments were served. From you, he trailed off. From me, what? Ariel's voice was steady, but her hands trembled. From you, she took a piece of your soul. The room tilted. Ariel reached for the back of a chair to steady herself. That's not possible. You can't. Nobody can just take someone's soul. Not the whole soul, Noah said quickly, moving toward her like he wanted to catch her if she fell. Just a fragment. The piece that holds your identity, your memories, your place in the pack consciousness. It's why nobody remembers you, Ariel. Not as you truly were. They remember a traitor, a threat, someone who deserved to be erased. But the girl who laughed at pack gatherings, who trained the younger wolves with patience nobody else had, who challenged me to a strategy game at that bonfire and nearly won, his voice cracked. She's been written out of existence. Ariel's legs gave out. She sank into the chair, staring at nothing. My parents. Do they remember me? The silence that followed was answer enough. They remember having a daughter who betrayed them, Noah said gently. They grieve the loss of who they thought you were. But the real you, the daughter they raised and loved, that's gone from their minds. A sound escaped Ariel's throat, something between a sob and a scream. She pressed her hands over her mouth, trying to hold it in, trying to maintain some shred of control. But the reality was too much. Too cruel. She was a ghost haunting her own life. Noah knelt in front of her, his hands covering hers. I remember, he said fiercely. The mate bond protected me from the spell. I remember everything, Ariel. Every conversation, every smile, every moment I watched you from across a room and thought about what it would be like to have the right to stand beside you. Tears burned down Ariel's cheeks. She'd cried more in the past 3 months than in her entire life before, and she was so tired of it. Tired of being broken, of feeling like everything that made her real had been stripped away. But Noah's hands were warm around hers, and the mate bond pulsed between them like a heartbeat, and somewhere deep inside, her wolf stirred with renewed determination. Tell me who I was, Ariel whispered. Before. Tell me the things Seraphine erased. Noah's eyes searched her face. Then he settled more comfortably on the floor in front of her, still holding her hands, and began to speak. You were fierce, he said. The kind of fierce that made grown warriors think twice about challenging you. But you never used it to bully or intimidate, you used it to protect. The younger pack members adored you because you'd spend hours teaching them combat forms that their own mentors had given up on. A fragment of memory surfaced, the weight of a training sword in her hand, the breathless laugh of a teenage wolf who'd finally executed a move correctly. You were brilliant, Noah continued. Strategically minded in a way that made council meetings actually interesting. You'd see angles nobody else considered, suggest solutions that were so elegant we'd all wonder why we hadn't thought of them first. Your father used to joke that you should be the one sitting on the Alpha Council, not him. More memories, these ones sharper. The smell of old books in her family's library. Her mother's patient voice explaining pack law. The satisfaction of solving a territorial dispute that had seemed impossible. You were kind, Noah said, his voice dropping softer. Not weak, never weak. But you had this way of seeing people, really seeing them, that made them feel like they mattered. Like their problems and dreams and fears were worth your attention. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. The night of the bonfire, you spent 20 minutes talking to an Omega who was terrified about his first transformation. By the end of the conversation, he was laughing. Ariel closed her eyes, trying to reconcile this version of herself with the broken, suspicious creature she'd become in Black Fong. I don't feel like that person anymore. Because Seraphine took her from you. Noah's grip tightened. But she's still in there, Ariel. Buried, maybe. Changed by what you've endured. But not gone. How can you be sure? Because you threw yourself in front of a shadow beast tonight to protect me, even though I'm the one who sent you to that prison. Noah's smile was sad. Because you're still fighting, still surviving, still looking for a way to reclaim what was stolen. That's not the behavior of someone who's broken. That's the behavior of someone who refuses to stay down. The words settled into Ariel's chest, finding cracks in the armor of self-doubt she'd built. Maybe he was right. Maybe the girl she'd been wasn't completely lost. Maybe she was just waiting to be remembered. There's something else you need to know, Noah said, his expression turning serious. About your power. About what it means to be Linearii. Ariel straightened, forcing herself to focus. Tell me. Noah released one of her hands to reach into his jacket, pulling out a small leather journal. It was old, the pages yellowed and fragile, the cover marked with symbols that made Ariel's skin prickle with recognition. I found this in the Council's restricted archives, Noah said, handing it to her. It's a first-hand account from one of the last Linearii before the Purge. Her name was Oriel, and she was my ancestor. The knowledge came from somewhere deep inside, like a memory that wasn't quite hers. Ariel opened the journal with trembling hands, and the handwriting on the first page seemed to pulse with latent power. To whoever reads this, I am Oriel, last daughter of the moon's blood, and I write this knowing I will not survive the coming dawn. The Council has declared us extinct, but extinction is just another word for forgotten. If you hold this journal, if you can read these words, then our bloodline lives. And you must understand what you are. Ariel's breath caught. She looked up at Noah, who was watching her with an intensity that made her heart race. Keep reading, he said quietly. She turned the page. We are not monsters, though they name us such. We are not abominations, though they hunt us like animals. We are the moon's chosen, born with the power to reshape the bonds that tie wolf to pack, alpha to territory, soul to destiny. This power frightens them because it challenges their control. An alpha rules by divine right, they say. But what happens when someone can rewrite that divinity? The truth they fear: we do not destroy alpha bonds. We reveal whether they were true to begin with. A just alpha, one chosen by merit and heart, has nothing to fear from a Linearii. We strengthen such bonds, make them unbreakable. But a tyrant? A leader who claims power through violence or deception. We unmask them. And for that, they have decided we must not exist. Ariel's hands shook as she continued reading. If you are reading this, young one, you have already begun to awaken. The silver light beneath your skin, the way moonstone cannot bind you, the sense that you can feel the very fabric of pack bonds around you, these are your birthright. But they come with a cost. Full awakening requires sacrifice. You must face the truth of who you are, claim the power that was sealed, and accept the destiny that comes with it. You will become the moon's executioner, not because you deal death, but because you execute justice. You will stand in judgment of those who hold power, and your very existence will force them to prove their worth. The Council knows this. That is why they hunt us. But know this, daughter of my blood, you are not alone. The moon herself watches over her children. And when the time comes, you will know what must be done. The entry ended there. Ariel flipped through the rest of the journal, finding pages of rituals, diagrams of power flows, descriptions of abilities that seemed impossible. But one entry near the end caught her attention. The true mate bond cannot be faked, no matter how skilled the blood magic. A Linearii can feel the difference between soul-deep connection and magical mimicry. Trust your instincts. Trust the bond. It will guide you home. Ariel looked up at Noah, the journal still open in her lap. She knew. Oriel knew they would try to fake bonds to control us. Noah nodded. The Council has been doing it for centuries. Arranging political marriages, creating artificial bonds to maintain power structures. But with the Linearii around, those fake bonds would be exposed. The entire system would collapse. So they killed every last one of us. Ariel's voice was hollow. Genocide masked as justice. Yes. Noah reached out, his fingers brushing the journal's pages. But they missed one bloodline. Yours. Your parents knew what you were and hid it with every resource they had. Sealed your power, falsified records, made sure no trace of Linearii markers appeared in official documentation. Until Seraphine figured it out. Ariel closed the journal carefully. How did she know? If my parents hid it so well. Because she found this. Noah pulled another object from his jacket, a silver pendant on a broken chain. The moment Ariel saw it, recognition slammed through her. Her mother's necklace. The one she'd worn every day, never taking it off, not even to sleep. It's a bloodline marker, Noah explained. Enchanted to reveal Linearia heritage to direct descendants. Seraphine found it in your mother's things, put it on, and saw the truth written in her own blood. That you carried the power, and she didn't. Ariel took the pendant with numb fingers. The metal was warm, and when she held it, images flashed through her mind, her mother's face, younger, happier, fastening this same necklace around Ariel's neck when she was a child. Whispering words she'd been too young to understand. "You're special, my moonlight. Never forget that. No matter what they say, no matter what they do, you are loved. You are powerful. You are exactly who you were meant to be." A sob tore from Ariel's throat. She clutched the pendant to her chest, and the mate bond flared as Noah pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, finally letting herself grieve. Not just for the 3 months in Black Fong, but for everything. For the life Seraphine had stolen, for the parents who no longer knew her, for the girl she'd been before the world decided she was too dangerous to exist. Noah held her through it, one hand stroking her hair, the other pressed against her back. He didn't offer empty platitudes or tell her it would be okay. He just held her, solid and warm and real, the mate bond wrapping around them both like a protective cocoon. When the tears finally subsided, Ariel pulled back enough to meet his eyes. "I want it back," she said, voice raw but steady. "Everything Seraphine took. My life, my power, my place. I want all of it back." Noah's smile was sharp, predatory. "Then we'll take it back. Together." He stood, pulling her up with him, and guided her toward a door at the back of the cottage. "But first, you need to heal. Rest. Let your body recover from what Black Fong did to you." He pushed the door open, revealing a bedroom with a large bed covered in soft blankets. "Tomorrow, we start your training. I'll teach you everything I've learned about Linearia abilities. And when you're ready." "When I'm ready, we go back," Ariel finished. She met his eyes, feeling something fierce and unbreakable settling into her bones. "And we make Seraphine pay for every lie she's told." Noah's hand came up to cup her face, and the tenderness in his expression made her chest ache. "You're magnificent," he said softly. "Even broken, even bleeding, you're the strongest person I've ever known." Ariel leaned into his touch, letting herself have this moment of peace before the war began. "Stay," she whispered. "Please. I don't want to be alone." Noah's expression softened. He nodded, and together they moved into the bedroom. Not for anything physical, they were both too exhausted, too raw, but for the simple comfort of not being alone. As Ariel lay down, Noah settled beside her, arms wrapping around her waist from behind. The mate bond hummed contentedly between them, and for the first time in 3 months, Ariel felt something that almost resembled safety. But as she closed her eyes, one thought echoed through her mind. Seraphine had taken everything from her. Her identity, her family, her place in the world. Had tried to erase her completely. But she'd made one critical mistake. She'd left Ariel alive. And now the forgotten daughter was coming back. Not as a victim. Not as a prisoner. As the moon's executioner. And justice would be served. Ariel woke to silver moonlight streaming through the window and the sound of Noah's voice, low and urgent, speaking to someone outside the bedroom. She sat up slowly, her body protesting the movement. Every muscle ached from the previous night's escape, but underneath the pain, she felt something else. Strength. Like her bones had been reinforced with steel while she slept, like her blood ran warmer and faster than it should. The mate bond pulsed, and she followed it like a thread, padding barefoot to the door. Noah stood in the main room, fully dressed despite the early hour, speaking into a communication crystal that glowed faint blue in his palm. "Don't care what excuse you have to give them," he was saying, voice clipped with authority. "Tell the council I'm conducting territory inspections in the northern regions. Buy me 3 days, Cashin. That's all I need. A male voice crackled through the crystal, tinny but clear. 3 days before they start asking questions you can't answer. And what about the Luna? Seraphine is already asking where you went. Noah's jaw tightened. Tell her I needed space. Tell her anything. Just keep her away from the council chambers until I return. You're playing a dangerous game, my king. I know. Noah's gaze flicked to where Ariel stood in the doorway, and something in his expression softened. But some things are worth the risk. He ended the communication with a gesture, the crystal's light dying. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Noah crossed the space between them in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. You should be resting, he murmured against her hair. I've rested enough. Ariel pulled back to look at him. 3 days. That's how long we have before they come looking for you. Noah nodded. 3 days to help you begin controlling your power. It's not enough time, not nearly, but it's what we have. Then we'd better not waste it. Ariel's voice was steady, determined. The broken girl from last night was still there, still aching, but she was buried beneath layers of resolve. Where do we start? Noah studied her face for a long moment, as if checking to make sure she was truly ready. Whatever he saw there must have satisfied him, because he stepped back and gestured toward the door. There's a place, he said. About a mile from here. I found it 2 years ago when I was establishing the wards around this cottage. I didn't understand what it was then, but after reading Oriel's journal, he trailed off, something like awe crossing his features. I think it's been waiting for you. 20 minutes later, they were deep in the forest, moving through trees so ancient that their trunks were wider than Ariel's entire body. The canopy overhead was so thick that almost no light penetrated, yet Ariel had no trouble seeing. The silver glow beneath her skin provided its own illumination, growing brighter the farther they walked. Do you feel that? Noah asked, glancing back at her. Ariel nodded. There was a pull in her chest, something that had nothing to do with the mate bond. It felt like a rope tied around her ribs, tugging her forward with gentle insistence. Like a mother calling her child home. They emerged into a clearing that shouldn't exist. The trees formed a perfect circle, their branches interlocking overhead to create a natural dome. In the center of the clearing stood a structure that made Ariel's breath catch, a shrine carved from white stone that seemed to glow with its own internal light. The stone was covered in symbols, the same ones from Oriel's journal, and at the very center stood an altar. On the altar lay a crown of silver thorns. Moon's mercy, Ariel whispered. Noah moved to stand beside her, his presence grounding even as her entire world tilted. According to the journal, every Lunarii bloodline had a sacred site, a place where the veil between the physical world and the moon's domain was thin, where the first of each bloodline was blessed, and where their descendants came to fully awaken their power. Ariel couldn't look away from the crown. It called to her, singing in a frequency only she could hear. Her feet moved without conscious thought, carrying her forward until she stood directly in front of the altar. Up close, she could see that the crown wasn't made of metal at all. It was crystallized moonlight, frozen into delicate thorns that caught and refracted every ray of illumination. Beautiful and terrible in equal measure. Oriel's journal said awakening requires sacrifice, Ariel said quietly. What kind of sacrifice? The truth. Noah's voice came from behind her. You have to face every part of yourself you've been hiding from. Every fear, every doubt, every dark thought you've pushed down. The crown will bring them all to the surface, and you'll have to acknowledge them. Accept them. Integrate them into who you are. Ariel's hands trembled. And if I can't? Then the power will consume you. Noah moved to stand beside her again, his hand finding hers. But I don't believe that will happen. You're stronger than you know, Ariel. Stronger than Seraphine, stronger than the council, maybe even stronger than you believe yourself to be. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to feel the certainty that radiated from his words. But all she felt was fear. What if I'm not who you think I am? The admission came out small, vulnerable. What if I awaken this power and it turns me into something monstrous? The council called the Lunarii executioners for a reason. What if they were right to fear us? Noah turned her to face him, his hands framing her face with devastating gentleness. Then I'll stand beside you anyway. Monster or savior, executioner or queen, it doesn't matter. You're my mate, Ariel. The other half of my soul. And I will choose you every time, no matter what form you take. The mate bond flared at his words, so bright it nearly brought her to her knees. In that moment, Ariel understood what Oriel's journal had meant about true bonds. This wasn't just attraction or compatibility. This was recognition at the deepest possible level, two souls that had been searching for each other across lifetimes, finally finding home. She stood on her toes and kissed him. It was meant to be brief, a thank you for his faith in her. But the moment their lips met, something inside Ariel cracked open. The mate bond roared to life, and suddenly she was drowning in sensation, his taste, his warmth, the way his hands tightened in her hair like he was afraid she might disappear. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Noah's eyes had shifted to his wolf's, golden and fierce and utterly focused on her. Later, he promised, voice rough. When you're healed and this is over and you're safe, I'm going to claim you properly. Make you mine in every way that matters. Heat flooded Ariel's cheeks, but she didn't look away. I'm already yours. I know. Noah's smile was soft, almost shy. But I want the world to know it too. Ariel turned back to the altar, to the crown that represented everything she'd been running from. With Noah's hand still in hers, she reached out with her free hand and touched the crown. The world exploded into light. Ariel gasped as power surged through her, so intense it felt like lightning in her veins. Her vision widened out, and when it returned, she was no longer standing in the clearing. She was somewhere else. Somewhere vast and endless, filled with silver light that stretched to infinity in every direction. The moon's domain, the space between the physical world and whatever came after. And she wasn't alone. A woman stood before her, tall and regal, with hair that flowed like liquid starlight and eyes that held the weight of centuries. She wore a gown that seemed to be made from the night sky itself, and on her head sat a crown identical to the one on the altar. Oriel. Hello, daughter of my blood, the woman said, her voice echoing from everywhere and nowhere. I've been waiting a very long time to meet you. Ariel's throat tightened. You're the one who wrote the journal. I am. Oriel moved closer, and Ariel realized she could see through her. She was a ghost, a memory, an echo preserved by powerful magic. I knew that someday someone would survive. That the bloodline would find a way to continue, even after the council's attempts to erase us. They almost succeeded, Ariel said bitterly. My power was sealed. I didn't even know what I was until your sister betrayed you and threw you into the one place that should have destroyed you. Oriel's smile was knowing. But Blackfang's moonstone didn't suppress your power, did it? It fed it. Because the council never understood what we truly are. What do you mean? Oriel gestured, and the silver light around them shifted, forming images. Ariel saw wolves running beneath a full moon, saw packs gathering, saw the intricate web of bonds that connected every member to their alpha and to each other. Wolves believe that alpha bonds are divine, Oriel said. That the moon herself chooses who leads and who follows. And they're right, she does. But what they don't understand is that the moon's justice is not the same as the council's order. The images shifted again, showing alphas who ruled with cruelty, who used their power to dominate rather than protect. Ariel saw pack members suffering in silence, bound by bonds they couldn't break, trapped in hierarchies that served only those at the top. We were created to be a check on that power, Oriel continued. The moon knew that even divine authority could be corrupted. So she created us, the Lunarii, her executioners. We can see the truth of any bond, feel whether it was forged with genuine connection or maintained through fear and manipulation. And when we find bonds that are false. Oriel raised her hand, and one of the images shattered. The false alpha bond dissolved, freeing the wolves trapped beneath it. We can break them, Ariel breathed. More than that. Oriel turned to face her fully. We can rewrite them. Create new bonds where old ones have failed. Strengthen connections that are true and dissolve those built on lies. We are the moon's hand in the mortal world, Ariel. We execute her justice, not through death, but through truth. The weight of it settled over Ariel like a mantle. This was what the council had feared. Not that the Lunarii were violent or destructive, but that they could expose every false claim to power, every manufactured bond, every leader who ruled through deception rather than merit. The Alpha King, Ariel said slowly. Noah. His bond with Seraphine, I can break it. You already know it's false, Oriel confirmed. The moment you touched him, you felt the truth. That's your power recognizing what shouldn't exist. But his bond with me is real. Oriel's expression softened. Soul deep and unbreakable. The kind of bond that comes once in a lifetime if you're lucky. The moon herself blessed your connection, Ariel. That's why Seraphine could never truly take your place. She could mimic the bond, could fool the physical senses, but she could never replicate what exists between true mates. Relief and something fiercer, possessiveness, surged through Ariel. Noah was hers. Had always been hers. No amount of blood magic could change that. What do I have to do? Ariel asked. To fully awaken. To claim this power. Oriel's expression turned serious. You must face the darkness, child. Not the darkness in others, the darkness in yourself. Every Lunarii carries the same burden. We judge others, but we must first be willing to judge ourselves. To acknowledge our own capacity for cruelty, for selfishness, for the same abuses of power we're meant to prevent. The silver light around them began to shift, darkening at the edges. Ariel's heart rate picked up. What you're about to see will hurt, Oriel warned. It will show you versions of yourself you don't want to acknowledge. Choices you could make, paths you could walk. The crown will force you to confront the question every Lunarii must answer. If you hold the power to reshape bonds and rewrite destinies, what's to stop you from becoming a tyrant yourself? Ariel's mouth went dry. And if I can't answer that question? Then the power will destroy you. Not out of malice, but because it knows you're not ready to wield it responsibly. Oriel reached out, and though her hand was translucent, Ariel felt the gentle touch on her cheek. But I believe you are ready. You've already been tested by betrayal and survived. Now you must be tested by power and prove you won't become what you're meant to fight against. The darkness rushed in, swallowing the silver light. And Ariel fell into her own worst nightmare. She was standing in the throne room of the capital, but everything was wrong. The walls were stained with blood, and at her feet lay Noah's body, broken and lifeless. In her hand, she held a crown, not of silver thorns, but of twisted black metal. You see, a voice whispered from the shadows. Her own voice. This is what you could become. A Lunarii who decided that true justice means you rule, because only you can see the truth. Only you can be trusted with power. Another scene flickered into existence. Ariel watched herself standing over Seraphine, her sister on her knees, begging for mercy. But this version of Ariel just smiled, cold and cruel, and with a gesture, shattered every bond Seraphine had, leaving her utterly alone, completely severed from pack and family and everything that made her wolf. She deserves it, the shadow Ariel whispered. She deserves to suffer as you suffered. And you have the power to make it happen. Why show mercy when you were shown none? More images. Ariel rewriting bonds to suit her own preferences, forcing connections between wolves who didn't choose each other. Ariel standing as judge over the Alpha Council, not to bring justice, but to seize power for herself. Ariel becoming exactly what they'd feared, an executioner who killed not for the moon's justice, but for her own satisfaction. Each image cut deeper than the last. Because the terrible truth was that part of her wanted these things. Part of her wanted revenge so badly it tasted like copper on her tongue. Part of her was so angry, so hurt, so desperate for control that the idea of absolute power was intoxicating. No, Ariel's voice was barely a whisper. This isn't who I am. Isn't it? The shadow self moved closer. You've been powerless for 3 months. Stripped of everything that made you who you were. Isn't it only natural to want to make sure that never happens again? To take enough power that no one can ever hurt you? Ariel's hands clenched into fists. Yes, I want that. I want to feel safe, to never be vulnerable again. But not like this. Not by becoming a monster. Why not? The council already thinks you're a monster. Your own parents don't remember you. What do you owe any of them? I don't owe them anything. Ariel's voice grew stronger. But I owe myself the truth. And the truth is that power without compassion is just tyranny wearing a different mask. The truth is that justice without mercy is just revenge. The truth is... She took a deep breath, feeling the words settle into her bones with absolute certainty. The truth is that I am angry. I am hurt. I want revenge so badly I can taste it. But I also know that becoming a tyrant to fight tyranny solves nothing. The council was wrong to genocide the Linearii, but that doesn't mean the Linearii were perfect. We carry the same capacity for corruption as anyone else. The only difference is we have the power to see it in others, which means we have to be even more vigilant about seeing it in ourselves. The darkness began to recede. I will take back what Seraphine stole, Ariel continued, her voice ringing with conviction. I will expose her lies and break the false bonds she created. But I won't do it by becoming the villain in someone else's story. I'll do it by being exactly what Auriel said the Linearii were meant to be, the moon's hand, executing truth and justice, not vengeance and cruelty. The shadow self smiled, and this time it looked proud. Then you understand. The darkness shattered like glass. Ariel gasped as she slammed back into her body, still standing in front of the altar with her hand on the crown of thorns. But everything had changed. The silver light beneath her skin wasn't just glowing anymore, it was blazing, so bright that the entire clearing was illuminated like midday. And she could feel them now. Every bond in the world around her, spreading out in an invisible web. She felt Noah standing behind her, their mate bond a golden rope that tied their souls together. She felt the false bond between Noah and Seraphine, a sickly green thread that pulsed with stolen magic. She felt pack bonds, family bonds, bonds of friendship and loyalty and love stretching out for miles in every direction. And she knew, with absolute certainty, which ones were true and which ones were lies. The crown of thorns lifted from the altar of its own accord, floating through the air until it settled on Ariel's head. Pain lanced through her skull as the thorns bit into her skin, drawing blood that glowed silver as it ran down her temples. But with the pain came power, vast and ancient and absolutely hers. The crown wasn't just accepting her. It was recognizing her as the rightful heir to Auriel's legacy. The last daughter of the moon's blood. The Linearii awakened. Ariel turned to face Noah, and his expression was one of pure awe. He dropped to one knee, not in submission but in recognition. In acknowledgement of what she'd become. Your Majesty, he said, and there was no mockery in the title. Only truth. Because Ariel understood now what Auriel had been trying to tell her. The Linearii weren't meant to rule, but they were meant to stand beside those who did. To be the conscience of power, the check on authority, the voice that asked the hard questions and demanded true answers. And right now, her place was beside Noah Blackthorn. Not as his subject. Not as his prisoner. As his equal. His mate. His queen. Ariel reached down and pulled him to his feet, the crown settling more firmly on her head. No kneeling, she said quietly. Not between us. We stand together, or not at all. Noah's smile was fierce, proud, utterly devoted. Together, then. He kissed her again, and this time the mate bond didn't just flare, it solidified, becoming unbreakable. The moon herself bore witness to their union, and somewhere in the capital, Ariel knew Seraphine felt the false bond shatter. The war had begun. And this time, the forgotten daughter was coming back with the power to rewrite destiny itself. The bond breaking felt like an earthquake. Ariel gasped, clutching Noah's arm as the shockwave rippled outward from where they stood. She could see it, actually see it, the false thread connecting Noah to Seraphine snapping in two, unraveling into wisps of sickly green magic that dissolved into nothing. In the capital, 200 miles away, Seraphine would be feeling it too. The sudden absence where stolen power used to be. The horrifying realization that her carefully constructed lie had just been exposed to the one person who mattered most. The Alpha King. She knows, Ariel whispered, still reeling from the magnitude of what she'd just done. The crown of thorns pulsed against her skull, warm and alive, feeding her information she was only beginning to understand how to process. Seraphine knows the bond is broken. She'll panic, Noah finished, his voice grim. His hand came up to cup Ariel's face, thumb brushing just below where the crown's thorns had drawn blood. The silver drops had already stopped flowing, the wounds sealing themselves. Which makes her dangerous. Cornered predators don't think clearly, they just attack. As if summoning her through speaking her name, the communication crystal in Noah's pocket flared to life. He pulled it out, and Cashin's voice crackled through, sharp with urgency. "My king, we have a situation." The Luna just collapsed during a council meeting, screaming about the mate bond being severed. "She's claiming you rejected her, that you've been compromised by enemy magic. The council is in chaos. Half of them want to send guards to find you immediately. The other half are demanding Seraphine be examined for signs of deception." Noah's expression darkened. "How long do I have?" "Hours, maybe less. Counselor Theron is already organizing a search party." "And Seraphine," Cashin paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was tight with concern. "She's demanding they execute the search protocol for hostile foreign influence." "My king, that protocol includes lethal force authorization," Noah said flatly. "She's trying to make sure that when they find me, I don't come back alive." Ariel's blood ran cold. The crown fed her flashes of information, images of the protocol Cashin mentioned, a contingency plan designed for if an Alpha King was ever captured and compromised by enemy powers. It authorized the council to use any means necessary to eliminate the threat, even if that meant killing the king himself. Because better a dead king than a corrupted one. "She's going to tell them you're under my control," Ariel said, the pieces clicking into place. "That I've used Lunarii magic to bind you, to make you believe we're mates when we're not. She'll paint herself as the victim, and me as the villain who stole you from her." Noah's jaw clenched. "Then we move the timeline up. We go back to the capital now, expose her before she can solidify her narrative." "You can't." Cashin's voice cut through the crystal. "The moment you set foot in the capital without explanation, they'll assume the protocol is valid. You'll be walking into an execution squad." "Then what do you suggest?" Noah's voice was sharp with frustration. "Give me time to plant doubts. I've already started questioning the mate bond publicly, asking how it could be real when you showed no signs of recognition before Ariel's trial. A few other council members are listening. But I need hours, not minutes, to build enough support to keep you alive when you return." Ariel's mind raced, processing the bonds she could feel stretching across the distance. Cashin's was strong, loyal, genuinely connected to Noah. But there were others, council members whose bonds to their Alpha King felt thin, corrupted by ambition or fear. Those would be the ones Seraphine could use to validate her story. "There's another problem," Ariel said quietly. "The shadow beasts at Blackfang. Someone summoned them, and I don't think it was random timing. I think Seraphine knew my power was awakening and sent them to kill me before I could fully transform." "Which means she has access to shadow magic," Noah said, his expression turning calculating. "That's explicitly forbidden by council law. If we can prove she's been using it." "It won't matter if she convinces them you're compromised first," Cashin interrupted. "They'll assume any evidence you present is fabricated. We need a different approach." The crown pulsed against Ariel's skull, and suddenly she knew what had to be done. The knowledge came from somewhere ancient, from Ariel's memories woven into the artifact itself. I need to go to the capital, Ariel said. Alone? Absolutely not. Noah's response was immediate, his hand tightening on her arm. You're not walking into that viper's nest without me. I have to. Ariel turned to face him fully, her silver eyes meeting his storm-gray ones. The Linearii were meant to stand in judgment, Noah. That means I need to face the council directly, let them see what I am, let them feel the truth of my power. If I come in with you, they'll assume we're working together, that I've corrupted you. But if I come in alone, if I surrender myself to their authority and demand a true trial, they'll kill you before you can speak. No, Ariel's voice was certain. They won't. Because the moment they try, every wolf in that council chamber will feel it, the wrongness of harming a Linearii. It's built into our nature. We're the moon's chosen. Attacking us without just cause goes against every instinct a wolf has. Noah looked like he wanted to argue, but the crown pulsed again and Ariel felt knowledge flowing between them through the mate bond. He was seeing what she saw, the threads of possibility, the paths this could take. If she went alone and faced the council with truth on her side, there was a chance. A slim one, but real. If Noah went with her, those paths collapsed into violence and death. I don't like this, Noah said finally. Every instinct I have is screaming at me to keep you close, to protect you. I know. Ariel reached up, her hand covering his where it still cupped her face. But I don't need protection anymore, Noah. I need you to trust that I can do this. That the girl you fell in love with is still here, just more now. His eyes searched hers for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. Cashin, prepare the council for an emergency session. Tell them the traitor from Blafong has returned to face judgment. That will buy Ariel time to get there and demand her trial before they can organize. Understood, Cashin said, though his voice was tight with worry. But my king, if this goes wrong. If it goes wrong, you get Noah out of the capital, Ariel interrupted. Promise me, Cashin. No matter what happens to me, you keep him safe. I'll do everything in my power, Cashin replied. Moon guide you, my lady. The crystal's light died. Ariel turned back to Noah, suddenly aware that this might be the last time they were alone together. The last time before everything changed, one way or another. If I don't make it back, don't. Noah's voice was rough, almost desperate. Don't say goodbye. We just found each other, Ariel. I'm not letting the story end here. Neither am I. She stood on her toes, pulling him down into a kiss that tasted like promises and defiance and hope. The mate bond blazed between them, and she poured everything she couldn't say into that connection, her love, her faith, her absolute determination to survive this and come back to him. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Noah pressed his forehead to hers. 3 hours, he said. That's how long Cashin needs to prepare the council. Use that time to get to the capital, but don't go in until I give the signal through the bond. I'll be watching from the shadows, and if anything goes wrong, I'm coming in whether you want me to or not. Ariel smiled despite the fear coiling in her stomach. I wouldn't expect anything less. They spent the next 2 hours preparing. Noah gave her clean clothes, simple but well-made, nothing that would mark her as either nobility or prisoner. The crown of thorns remained on her head, visible and undeniable. She needed the council to see it, to understand what she was before they tried to execute her for what they thought she'd done. As the time to leave approached, Noah pulled her aside one more time. There's something you need to know, he said quietly. About the council. Not all of them are corrupt, but some of them, he paused, choosing his words carefully. Some of them knew. About the Linearii genocide. About the false bonds. They've built their power on those lies, and they'll do anything to protect them. Who? Ariel asked. Counselor Theron is the worst. He's been on the council for 50 years, and he personally led the hunting parties during the final purge. If he realizes what you are before you can present your case, Noah's jaw tightened. He'll try to kill you, council protocols be damned. Ariel nodded, filing the information away. The crown pulsed, feeding her more details about Theron, his bonds to various pack members, the web of influence he'd built, the darkness that stained his connection to the Alpha King. He was powerful and dangerous, and he'd have the most to lose if the truth about the Lunarii came out. I'll be careful, she promised. Be more than careful. Noah pulled her into one final embrace, his arms tight enough to hurt. Be ruthless. Be the executioner they fear. Because mercy will get you killed in that chamber. Ariel closed her eyes, breathing in his scent, memorizing the feel of his heartbeat against her cheek. Then she pulled back, squared her shoulders, and let the power of the crown settle more fully around her. She was Ariel, daughter of a forgotten bloodline. She was Lunarii, the moon's chosen executioner. And she was done hiding. The journey to the capital took 90 minutes at a dead run. Ariel's newly awakened power made her faster than she'd ever been, tireless in a way that should have been impossible. The forest blurred around her, and more than once she felt other wolves nearby, watching her pass with mixture of awe and fear. They could sense what she was now. The crown made sure of that. She arrived at the capital's outer gates as the sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and gold. The city rose before her like a monument to pack power, towering structures of stone and steel, thousands of wolves living in carefully ordered hierarchies, all of it centered around the massive council hall where the Alpha King held court. Where Seraphine was waiting. Ariel felt the false Luna before she saw her, a twisted knot of stolen power and desperate fear, pulsing like an infected wound in the web of bonds. Seraphine had surrounded herself with guards, had positioned council members loyal to her in strategic positions, had done everything she could to fortify her position. But she couldn't hide from a Lunarii. Ariel walked through the gates with her head high, the crown of thorns gleaming silver in the dying light. Guards moved to intercept her, hands on weapons, but the moment they got close enough to feel her power, they hesitated. Confusion flickered across their faces. Their wolves were telling them something their minds couldn't process, that this wasn't an enemy. This was something sacred. I am Ariel, she said, her voice carrying with preternatural clarity. And I have come to face the council's judgment. Word spread like wildfire. By the time Ariel reached the council hall, a crowd had gathered. Pack members pressed close, whispering, staring at the crown on her head with expressions ranging from wonder to terror. Some of the older wolves were weeping, whether from joy or grief, Ariel couldn't tell. But they all felt it. The return of something their grandparents had only known through stories. The Lunarii had come back. The council hall's doors stood open, light spilling out into the courtyard. Ariel paused at the threshold, feeling Noah through the bond. He was close, hidden somewhere in the shadows, watching, ready to intervene if needed. She sent reassurance through their connection, then stepped inside. The council chamber was exactly as she remembered from her trial 3 months ago, a circular room with seats arranged in tiers, all facing the center where the accused would stand. 12 council members sat in their positions, and at the highest seat, looking pale and furious and barely controlled, sat Seraphine. Her sister wore the Luna's crown, a delicate thing of gold and diamonds that looked cheap and garish next to the silver thorns on Ariel's head. The moment their eyes met, Seraphine's face went white. No, she whispered. You're dead. You're supposed to be dead. Clearly not. Ariel walked to the center of the chamber, to the same spot where she'd stood 3 months ago when they'd condemned her. But this time, she wasn't broken. This time, she was wreathed in silver light, crowned in moonlit thorns and radiating power that made the air itself tremble. Counselor Theron rose from his seat, and Ariel saw exactly what Noah had warned her about. This man, ancient, powerful, his bonds stained with the blood of her ancestors, looked at her with pure hatred. Linearii, he spat the word like a curse. The traitor returns wearing the crown of our enemies. Guards, seize her immediately and... No. The word rang out with absolute authority, and it didn't come from Ariel. It came from every wolf in the chamber. The guards who'd been moving forward stopped dead, confusion washing over their faces. The council members shifted uncomfortably. Even Theron looked uncertain. Because Ariel's power was doing exactly what she'd predicted, overriding the false narrative with undeniable truth. Every wolf in this room could feel it now. She wasn't a threat. She was judgment. And they had been weighed and found wanting. I have returned, Ariel said, her voice calm and inexorable as the tide, to stand before this council not as a criminal, but as what I truly am. I am Linearii, daughter of the moon's blood, and I have come to execute truth. She raised her hand, and silver light exploded from her palm. In the light, every bond in the chamber became visible, golden threads connecting pack members to their alpha, green threads of friendship, red threads of family, blue threads of loyalty. And there, pulsing sickly between Seraphine and Noah's empty seat, was the severed remnant of the false mate bond. 3 months ago, Ariel continued, you condemned me for crimes I didn't commit. You sent me to Blackfang to die. But you failed to ask one simple question. Who benefited from my disappearance? She turned to face Seraphine directly. My sister stole my identity. Used blood magic to fake a mate bond with the Alpha King. Orchestrated my trial to ensure I couldn't awaken my power and expose her lies. Ariel's voice never rose, never wavered. And when she discovered that Blackfang couldn't suppress what I am, she sent shadow beasts to finish the job. Lies. Seraphine shrieked, rising from her seat. She's using Linearii magic to deceive you. Can't you see? She's exactly what our ancestors feared, a tyrant who wants to overthrow the natural order. Then let us see. Ariel raised both hands now, and the silver light intensified. Let every wolf in this chamber feel the truth of the bonds between us. If I lie, the light will show it. If I speak truth, you'll know it in your souls. The light pulsed, and suddenly everyone could feel it, the twisted, corrupted bond between Seraphine and the absent Alpha King. The stolen power. The blood magic. The lies woven so deeply into the fabric of pack reality that they'd become accepted as truth. And beneath it all, shining pure and unbreakable, was the true mate bond between Ariel and Noah. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Several council members stood, shock written across their faces. Even some of Seraphine's supporters looked horrified. Only Theron remained unmoved. Shadow magic, he said coldly. The Linearii are corrupting your perceptions. This is exactly why they were purged. The Linearii were purged because you feared accountability. Ariel cut him off. Because we could see through the false bonds you've been using to maintain power for centuries. Because we represented the moon's true justice, and that threatened your control. She took a step toward Theron, and the old counselor actually flinched. I can see your bonds, counselor. Every single one. And I can tell you exactly how many of them are real versus how many you've manufactured through coercion and blood magic. Should I share that information with the council? Should I execute truth here and now? You wouldn't dare, Theron hissed. Try me. The standoff hung in the air, tension coiling like a spring about to snap. Then Seraphine made her move. Ariel felt it through the bonds, a surge of dark magic, shadow power that had no place in a council chamber. Her sister was desperate, cornered, and she was doing the one thing she'd promised herself she'd never do. She was revealing exactly what she was. If I can't have him, Seraphine screamed, her form beginning to shift, shadows wreathing her body, then neither can you. Shadow beasts materialized in the council chamber, smaller than the ones at Blackfang, but no less deadly. Wolves screamed, scrambling for exits. Guards drew weapons. Chaos erupted. And in the center of it all, Seraphine stood wreathed in darkness, her eyes burning red, her carefully maintained mask finally shattered. You ruined everything, she shrieked at Ariel. You were always the special one, the powerful one, the one everyone loved. Even when I tried to take your place, they still whispered your name. So if I can't be you, I'll destroy you." The shadow beasts lunged. Ariel raised her hands, and the crown of thorns blazed like a star. The battle for truth had begun. The shadow beasts never reached her. Silver light exploded from Ariel's palms, forming a barrier that vaporized the creatures before they could cross the distance. The crown of thorns pulsed with power so ancient and vast that the very stones of the council hall trembled. But it wasn't destruction Ariel channeled, it was revelation. Every bond in the chamber became visible, tangible, undeniable. And what they revealed made even Theron go silent. Seraphine's connections were rotted through with shadow magic, corrupted threads that bound people to her through fear and compulsion rather than genuine loyalty. Worse, those threads extended beyond the council chamber, reaching into the capital's guard force, into noble houses, into positions of power throughout the Pact territories. Her sister hadn't just stolen Ariel's identity. She'd been systematically infecting the entire Pact structure with dark magic for months. "Moon's mercy," one of the council members whispered. "How did we not see it?" "Because she's good at hiding," Ariel said, her voice carrying despite the chaos. "Because she studied every forbidden text our family possessed, learned every dark ritual the council thought they'd destroyed. And because she knew that if she could just eliminate me, no one would ever be able to expose what she'd become." Seraphine was backing toward the far exit now, her shadow beasts forming a protective circle around her. Her beautiful face was twisted with rage and something that looked almost like grief. "You don't understand," she hissed. "You've never understood. Do you know what it's like? Being the younger sister, the lesser daughter, always living in your shadow." "So you became the shadow," Ariel said quietly. "Literally. I became powerful." Seraphine's voice cracked. "I found magic that didn't care about bloodlines or birth order or who the moon chose. Magic that gave me control over my own destiny instead of accepting whatever scraps you left behind." For just a moment, Ariel saw past the monster to the girl underneath. Her sister, who used to braid her hair and steal sweets from the kitchen and laugh so hard she'd snort. The girl who looked up to Ariel with adoration until that adoration had curdled into resentment. The crown pulsed, feeding Ariel knowledge about shadow magic, how it worked, what it cost. And the price was always the same, your humanity, piece by piece, until nothing remained but hunger and darkness. Seraphine was dying. Had been dying from the moment she'd first channeled shadow power. And she'd known it, had accepted it, because destroying Ariel had mattered more than her own survival. "It didn't have to be this way," Ariel said, and meant it. "You could have talked to me, told me how you felt. We could have found another path." "There was no other path," Seraphine screamed. "As long as you existed, I was nothing. The moment your power awakened, I would have been erased completely. At least this way, I got to be someone, even if only for a little while." The shadows around her surged, and Ariel realized with cold horror what her sister was about to do. "She's going to detonate," Cashin's voice rang out. He'd appeared from somewhere in the back of the chamber, blade drawn, his face grim. Shadow magic users who've gone too far, when they're cornered, they collapse their own essence. Takes out everything in a 100-foot radius. Panic rippled through the council. Wolves scrambled for the exits, trampling over each other in their desperation to escape. Even Theron abandoned his seat, his earlier bravado evaporating in the face of imminent death. But Ariel couldn't move. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal, the torture, the attempted murder, Seraphine was still her sister. Still the girl who used to climb into Ariel's bed during thunderstorms. Still family. "Ari, you need to run," Cashin said urgently, moving to her side. "There's nothing you can do. She's too far gone. I'm not leaving her. She tried to kill you." "I know." Ariel's eyes never left Seraphine. "But I'm not becoming the kind of person who abandons family, even when they deserve it. That's what separates me from her." The mate bond suddenly flared with alarm, and Ariel felt Noah's presence a split second before he materialized beside her. He must have been watching from somewhere close, must have felt her determination through the bond. Ariel, no, he said, his voice rough with fear. You can't save her. The shadow magic has consumed too much. I have to try. She stepped forward, past Cashin's restraining hand, past Noah's protest, walking directly toward the churning mass of shadows that used to be her sister. The crown of thorns blazed brighter with each step, silver light pushing back against the darkness. Seraphine, she called out. Look at me. Really look at me. The shadows parted enough for her sister's face to appear. Seraphine's eyes were almost completely red now, her skin gray and cracking like old parchment. She looked ancient and young at the same time, like the magic was aging her decades with each passing second. Why are you here? Seraphine's voice was distorted, layered with inhuman echoes. I'm going to destroy everything. You should hate me. Should want me dead. I do hate what you did, Ariel admitted. I hate that you framed me, imprisoned me, tried to erase me from existence. I hate that you stole 3 months of my life and corrupted the pack with dark magic. But you're still my sister, Sarah. And I remember who you were before the shadows took you. Something flickered in Seraphine's expression, surprise, maybe, or the ghost of the girl she used to be. Don't call me that. That person is gone. Is she? Ariel was close enough now to touch the shadows, to feel the corruption radiating from them. The crown fed her information about what needed to be done, and the price that would come with it. Or is she just buried so deep you've forgotten she exists? It doesn't matter. Tears were streaming down Seraphine's gray face now. I can't come back from this, Ari. The shadow magic, it's eaten everything I was. Even if I wanted to stop, I couldn't. The detonation has already started. Ariel could feel it, the magical pressure building, the inevitable collapse. Cashin was right. Seraphine was too far gone for conventional salvation. But Ariel wasn't conventional anymore. The Linearii don't just execute judgment, she said quietly. We also execute mercy. And you're still my sister, Sarah. So I'm going to give you a choice. She raised her hand, and silver light danced across her fingers. I can end this painlessly. Let you go into the moon's embrace before the detonation completes. Or, she paused, the crown pulsing with possibility. I can try something that's never been done before. I can use Linearii magic to sever the shadow corruption, cut out the darkness that's consuming you. But it will hurt worse than anything you've ever felt, and there's no guarantee you'll survive the process. Seraphine stared at her. Why would you offer me that? After everything I did to you? Because you're family. Ariel's voice cracked. And because I've spent 3 months learning what it feels like to be abandoned by everyone who is supposed to love you. I won't do that to someone else, even if they deserve it. Behind her, Noah's presence was solid and unwavering through the mate bond. She could feel his concern, his desire to protect her, but also his faith that she knew what she was doing. That she could make this choice, and he would support her, whatever happened. Seraphine's expression crumbled. For just a moment, the shadows receded enough to show the girl underneath, broken, terrified, drowning in consequences of her own making. It hurts so much, she whispered. The shadows. They promised power, but all they give is pain. Make it stop, Ari. Please. I don't want to die like this. I don't want to die as a monster. Ariel reached forward and took her sister's hand. The moment their skin connected, power exploded between them. Silver light from Ariel's crown met the roiling shadows of Seraphine's corruption, and the collision was cataclysmic. Ariel could feel the darkness trying to consume her, to drag her down into the same abyss that had swallowed her sister. But she had something Seraphine didn't, the mate bond with Noah, anchoring her to reality. The crown of thorns, channeling the moon's power directly into her veins. And the sheer, stubborn determination to save the one person who'd tried hardest to destroy her. The Linearii magic worked differently than anything Ariel had channeled before. Instead of destroying the shadows, it illuminated them, forced Seraphine to see every choice that had led her here, every moment she could have turned back, but didn't, every piece of herself she'd sacrificed for power that was never hers to claim. And then it gave her the chance to let it all go. Seraphine screamed. It wasn't a sound of rage or defiance, it was pure anguish, the sound of someone having their entire being unmade and remade simultaneously. The shadows fought back, tried to maintain their hold, but Ariel's silver light was relentless. It carved through the corruption like a surgeon's blade, precise and merciless. Every council member in the chamber could see it happening, the darkness being pulled out of Seraphine's body like poison from a wound, dissolving in the face of moonlight. Some looked horrified, others awed. Theron's expression was unreadable. The process felt like it took hours, but it could only have been minutes. When it finally ended, Seraphine collapsed into Ariel's arms, human again, her skin no longer gray, her eyes their normal brown instead of demonic red. But she was barely breathing. "I'm sorry," Seraphine whispered, so quiet Ariel almost didn't hear it. "For all of it. I'm so sorry, Ari." "I know." Ariel lowered her sister gently to the ground, her own hands shaking with exhaustion. The crown's power had drained her more than she'd expected. "Just rest now. You're going to be okay." "No, I'm not." Seraphine's smile was sad, knowing. "You saved me from becoming a monster, but you couldn't save me from the price. The shadow magic, it took too much. I'm dying anyway, just more slowly now. More humanely." Ariel's throat tightened. She'd known it was a possibility, had felt the extent of the damage while she was cutting away the corruption. But hearing Seraphine say it out loud made it real in a way it hadn't been before. "Then we'll make whatever time you have left count," Ariel said fiercely. "You'll face justice for what you did, but you'll face it as yourself. Not as the shadow-corrupted thing you'd become." Seraphine nodded weakly. Then her eyes focused on something over Ariel's shoulder. "He's here. Your mate. The real one." Ariel turned to find Noah kneeling beside her. His expression was complex, relief that Ariel was unharmed, wariness toward Seraphine, and something that looked like respect for what Ariel had just done. "You should have let me help," he said quietly. "This was something I needed to do alone." Ariel leaned into him anyway, letting his solid presence ground her. "Family business." Noah's arm came around her waist, and the mate bond pulsed with warmth. In that moment, with Seraphine safely contained and the council watching in stunned silence, Ariel finally let herself feel the weight of what had just happened. She'd faced her sister, saved her life, and proven to everyone watching that the Lunarii weren't monsters, they were exactly what Auriel had claimed. Justice tempered with mercy. "The council will want answers," Noah said. "They'll want to know what happens next. To Seraphine. To you. To us. Let them wait." Ariel was suddenly exhausted, her bones heavy, her mind foggy. Using that much power had taken everything she had. "Right now, I just need." Her vision swam. Noah's grip tightened as her legs gave out, catching her before she could fall. The last thing she heard before darkness claimed her was his voice, urgent but somehow distant. "Get a healer. Now." When Ariel woke, she wasn't in the council hall anymore. She was lying in a bed so soft it felt like floating, covered in blankets that smelled like Noah, pine and winter storms, and something uniquely him. Moonlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows, and when she turned her head, she found him sitting in a chair beside the bed, watching her with an intensity that made her heart skip. "How long?" she asked, her voice rough. 8 hours. Noah leaned forward, reaching for her hand. "You depleted your magical reserves completely. The healer said you'd wake when your body had regenerated enough power to function." Ariel tested her connection to the crown and found it still there, though dimmed. The thorns had retracted while she slept, no longer drawing blood, but she could feel their presence waiting just beneath her skin. "Seraphine," she asked. "Alive." confined to the healing ward under guard. She's been telling the council everything, every ritual she performed, every person she corrupted, every lie she told. Noah's expression darkened. It's worse than we thought. The shadow magic had spread through at least 20% of the pack's upper hierarchy. We're going to be untangling this mess for months. And Theron, Noah's smile was sharp, resigned from the council an hour after you collapsed. Apparently, having a lunarii in the capital who can see through false bonds made him reconsider his position. 3 other council members followed his lead. Ariel processed that. They were all guilty, all maintaining power through corruption. Yes, Noah's thumb brushed across her knuckles. And they know you can expose them if you choose to. You've essentially neutered half the council's ability to operate through backroom deals and manufactured alliances. Good. Ariel tried to sit up and immediately regretted it. Her head spun, and Noah was there instantly, supporting her back, adjusting pillows. Easy, he murmured. You saved your sister's life and dismantled a shadow magic conspiracy in the same night. You're allowed to be exhausted. Once she was settled, propped up against the headboard, Ariel really looked at him. At the dark circles under his eyes, the tension in his shoulders, the way his jaw was tight with barely suppressed emotion. You haven't slept, she observed. I couldn't. His confession came out rough. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw you walking toward those shadow beasts. Saw you touching Seraphine despite knowing she could kill you. Saw you collapsing in my arms with your skin so cold I thought. He stopped, shaking his head. Ariel reached up, cupping his face with her free hand. I'm okay. You're reckless. But there was no heat in the accusation. Just bone-deep fear finally finding its voice. Do you have any idea what it did to me? Watching you risk everything, knowing I couldn't protect you, couldn't even help because you'd ordered me to stay back. I know. She did. The mate bond had carried his terror through every moment of her confrontation with Seraphine. But I also know that you trusted me enough to let me do what needed to be done. Even when every instinct you had screamed at you to intervene. Noah closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. Harder than sending you to Blafong, harder than spending 3 months pretending to be bonded to your sister. Watching you face danger and forcing myself to trust that you could handle it. But you did trust me. Ariel's thumb brushed across his cheekbone. That means everything, Noah. It means you see me as an equal, not just as someone to protect. As your mate, not your subject. He opened his eyes, and the storm-gray depths were molten with emotion. You are my equal. In power, in courage, in every way that matters. And watching you tonight, seeing you show mercy to someone who tried to destroy you, I've never been more certain that you're exactly who I'm meant to stand beside. The mate bond flared between them, gold and silver light intertwining until they couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. Noah leaned forward, his forehead resting against hers, and for a long moment they just breathed together. What happens now? Ariel finally asked. Now, Noah pulled back enough to meet her eyes. Now we rebuild. The council is in chaos, the pack's power structure has been exposed as corrupted, and we have a lunarii who can see the truth of every bond in the territories. We use that. We reform the system from the inside out, create a government based on genuine connection instead of manufactured loyalty. That's going to make us a lot of enemies. I know. His smile was fierce. But we'll face them together. As mates. As equals. As partners in rebuilding something better than what came before. Ariel felt something settle in her chest, not peace, exactly, but purpose. This was what the lunarii were meant for. Not just execution of justice, but the construction of something more fair afterward. There's one more thing, Noah said, his expression turning serious. The council has formally requested that you take a position as keeper of bonds. It's an ancient role, hasn't been filled in 2 centuries, but essentially you'd be responsible for verifying the legitimacy of all major pact bonds, mates, alliances, council appointments. They're creating a position specifically to let me police them, Ariel said. Yes. Because they know if they don't, you'll do it anyway, and this way they can at least pretend they have some say in the process. Noah's smile was wry. It's not ideal, but it's a start. A formal recognition that the Linearii have a place in pack governance. Ariel considered it. The crown pulsed gently, and she knew Oriel would have approved. This was exactly the role her ancestor had envisioned, not ruling, but standing watch. Making sure power was wielded justly. I'll accept, she said. On one condition. Name it. You make the mate bond between us public. Official. No more hiding, no more political maneuvering. If I'm going to be keeper of bonds, I need everyone to know that the most important bond one guard is my own. Noah's eyes blazed. I was going to demand that anyway. You think I'm letting you out of this bed before I've formally claimed you in front of the entire pack? The possessiveness in his voice sent heat curling through Ariel's stomach. I'm still recovering. I know. Noah's hand slid from her face down to rest over her heart. Which is why we're going to spend the next few days right here. No council meetings, no political machinations, no saving anyone. Just us, learning how to be mates without the world falling apart around us. That sounds. Ariel paused, searching for the right word. Impossible. Noah laughed, the sound warm and genuine. Probably. But we're going to try anyway. He climbed onto the bed beside her, carefully arranging them so Ariel could rest against his chest without putting pressure on her depleted body. The mate bond hummed contentedly between them, and for the first time since her awakening, Ariel felt something close to peace. Tell me about the future, she murmured, her eyes already growing heavy again. The one we're going to build. Noah's arms tightened around her. A world where bonds are true. Where alphas earn their positions instead of inheriting them. Where someone like you, powerful, compassionate, unwilling to compromise your integrity, can exist without being hunted for it. Sounds utopian. It's a start. His voice was soft, reverent. And we'll build it together. One true bond at a time. Ariel smiled against his chest. Outside, she could hear the capital stirring, wolves beginning to process what had happened, the implications of having a Linearii among them again, the massive changes that were coming. But in this moment, wrapped in Noah's arms with the mate bond singing between them, none of that mattered. She was home. She was safe. She was loved. And tomorrow, they would begin rebuilding the world. The peace lasted exactly 3 days. 3 perfect days where Ariel recovered her strength, where she and Noah learned each other in ways that had nothing to do with crisis or survival. 3 days of whispered conversations in the dark, of shared meals and quiet laughter, of the mate bond settling into something unshakable and eternal. 3 days before everything shattered. It started with a summons. Ariel was in Noah's chambers, their chambers now, though the formal claiming ceremony was still 2 days away, reviewing the list of bonds she'd need to verify as keeper when Cashin arrived. His face was grim, and the way his hand rested on his blade told her everything she needed to know. Something had gone catastrophically wrong. The council has called an emergency session, Cashin said without preamble. They're demanding both of you appear within the hour. And Ariel, he paused, jaw tight. They're calling it a trial. Your trial. The air went cold. Noah was on his feet instantly, fury radiating from every line of his body. That's impossible. The council agreed to create the keeper position. They acknowledged her innocence. They accepted her display of power, Cashin corrected quietly. But they never formally pardoned her for the original charges. And now someone's convinced them that everything that happened 3 nights ago, Seraphine's corruption, the shadow magic, all of it, was actually Ariel's doing. Ariel's stomach dropped. They think I framed Seraphine. Worse. They think you've been using Linearii magic to manipulate everyone's perception from the beginning. That the real traitor was never Seraphine, it was you all along. And you orchestrated this elaborate deception to seize power and corrupt the Alpha King. The crown of thorns materialized on Ariel's head, thorns extending as her power flared in response to the threat. Through the network of bonds she could feel across the capital, she searched for the source of this accusation. And found it. Theron. The old counselor hadn't fled after all. He'd been regrouping, gathering allies, building a case. And he'd found the perfect scapegoat, the newly awakened Lunarii who'd exposed him, who threatened everything he'd built over 5 decades of careful manipulation. He's convinced them I'm the threat, Ariel said flatly. That I need to be eliminated before I can corrupt the entire pack structure. Noah's hands clenched into fists. Then we don't go. We fortify our position here, call in loyal packs, prepare for civil war. Ariel finished his thought. That's what will happen if we refuse. Theron will paint it as proof of guilt, will rally the council members who are still loyal to the old system, will fracture the pack territories into those who support the Alpha King and those who think he's been compromised. She could see it playing out through the bonds, the fragile alliances already straining, the fear and suspicion spreading like poison through the capital. Theron had chosen his moment perfectly. The pack was already destabilized from Seraphine's corruption being exposed. One more push, and everything would collapse into chaos. So we face them, Noah said, his voice deadly calm. Together. We show them the truth. They won't believe the truth if it comes from me. Ariel's mind was racing, processing possibilities, searching for the path that didn't end in mass violence. That's the whole point. Theron's convinced them that Lunarii magic can manipulate perception. Anything I show them, any bonds I reveal, they'll assume I fabricated. Then what do? Cashin demanded. Ariel closed her eyes, reaching deep into the crown's knowledge, into Auriel's memories. There was a way out of this. There had to be. The Lunarii had faced false accusations before, had been forced to prove their innocence to skeptical councils. And the answer, when it came, made her blood run cold. Trial by moon judgment, she whispered. Both men went still. No, Noah's voice was flat, absolute. Absolutely not. It's the only way. Ariel opened her eyes, meeting his stormy gaze. It's the one test that can't be faked or manipulated. The moon herself passes judgment. If I'm guilty of using my power corruptly, she'll strip it from me. If I'm innocent, she'll confirm my right to bear the crown. And if the trial goes wrong? Noah was in front of her now, hands gripping her shoulders. If there's even the smallest doubt, the smallest imperfection in how you wield your power, the moon could kill you outright. That's why no Lunarii has undergone moon judgment in over a century, because the price of failure is death. I know the price. Ariel's voice was steady, even as her heart hammered against her ribs. But I also know that if we don't do this, Theron wins. He'll fracture the pack, start a war, and everything we've been trying to build will burn. Thousands of wolves will die because he convinced them I'm a threat. Let them think you're a threat. Noah's grip tightened, desperation seeping into his voice. We'll prove it differently, we'll find another way. There is no other way. The words came out sharper than Ariel intended. She softened her tone, reaching up to cup Noah's face. This is what the Lunarii were made for, Noah. To stand in judgment even when that judgment might destroy us. Auriel wrote about it in her journal, how the only thing that separates us from tyrants is our willingness to submit to the moon's authority. Through the mate bond, she felt his anguish. He knew she was right. Knew this was the path that avoided the most bloodshed. But every instinct he had was screaming at him to protect her, to find literally any alternative to putting her in mortal danger. I can't lose you, he said quietly. Not when I just got you back. You won't. Ariel infused the words with every ounce of certainty she possessed. I survived Blackfang. I survived awakening. I survived cutting shadow corruption out of my own sister. I can survive this too. Noah stared at her for a long moment. Then he pulled her into a fierce embrace, burying his face in her hair. If this goes wrong, if you die because of this, I'm razing the council to the ground and every wolf who supported this trial with it. Fair enough. Ariel's smile was sad. But you'll have to find a new keeper of bonds first. Can't reform the system without one. The attempt at levity fell flat. Noah pulled back, his expression raw. This isn't funny. I know. She touched her forehead to his. I'm terrified, Noah. But I'm also certain this is right. Can you trust me? One more time. The mate bond pulsed between them, his fear, her determination, their love for each other woven so tightly that separating one emotion from another was impossible. Finally, Noah nodded. Always. I'll always trust you. The council chamber was packed. Not just with council members, but with pack leaders from surrounding territories, with noble families, with witnesses who'd been summoned to observe. The crowd spilled out into the corridors, hundreds of wolves pressed close, all of them wanting to see what would happen when the Linearii faced Moon Judgment. Ariel walked through them with her head high, the crown of thorns blazing silver on her head. Noah walked beside her, not behind, not ahead, but exactly parallel. A statement in itself. They were equals, and whatever judgment fell on her would fall on him too. Theron stood at the center of the chamber, looking satisfied and righteous in equal measure. He'd positioned himself perfectly, the concerned elder statesman, merely asking questions, ensuring the pack's safety. Nothing in his demeanor suggested the calculated manipulation that had led to this moment. Ariel of House Shadowmere, Theron's voice rang out. You stand accused of high treason against the pack, of using forbidden Linearii magic to corrupt bonds and manipulate perception, and of orchestrating the false imprisonment of your own sister to seize power. How do you answer these charges? With Moon Judgment, Ariel said clearly. I call upon the ancient right, witnessed by the council and blessed by the moon herself. Let her strip me of power if I've used it corruptly. Let her confirm my innocence if my accusations are true. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several council members looked uncomfortable. Moon Judgment was rarely invoked, and never without serious risk. But Theron's expression remained satisfied, because he thought he'd won either way. Either Ariel would fail the trial and die, eliminating the threat she posed, or she'd succeed, and he'd find some way to twist even that victory. He'd spent 50 years manipulating pack politics. One Linearii wasn't going to stop him. What he didn't know was that Ariel had spent 3 days reading every word of Oriel's journal, learning not just how Moon Judgment worked, but what it actually tested. And the truth was far more dangerous than Theron could imagine. The trial will commence at moonrise, another council member announced. In accordance with ancient law, the accused will stand in the judgment circle alone. No assistance, no intervention. The moon will either accept her or reject her. I understand the terms, Ariel said. Noah's hand found hers, squeezing once before letting go. Through the mate bond, she felt his barely controlled fear, his desperate wish that there was any other way. But there wasn't. The hours until moonrise were the longest of Ariel's life. She spent them in a preparation chamber, alone except for occasional visits from Noah and Cashin. The crown fed her information about what was coming, how the trial would work, what questions the moon would ask, what price failure would demand. It wasn't a test of power. It was a test of truth. The moon would dig into every corner of Ariel's soul, exposing every lie she'd ever told, every cruel thought she'd hidden, every moment of doubt or weakness. And she would have to acknowledge all of it publicly, in front of everyone watching. The Linearii's strength wasn't in being perfect, it was in being honest about their imperfections. That's what separated them from tyrants. Tyrants hid their flaws. Linearii bore them openly. When the moon finally rose, full and silver and impossibly bright, Ariel was escorted to the judgment circle. It was ancient, this place. Carved into the stone courtyard behind the council hall, predating the current government by centuries. The circle itself was marked with symbols that glowed faint silver in the moonlight, and at its center stood a single pillar of white stone. The pillar where condemned Linearii had been executed during the purge. Ariel stepped into the circle, feeling the wards activate around her. The crowd pressed close to the barriers, hundreds of faces watching with expressions ranging from hope to fear to cruel anticipation. Theron stood at the front, arms crossed, looking like a man who'd already won. "Let the moon bear witness," the eldest council member intoned. "Let truth be revealed and justice be done." The moonlight intensified, becoming almost solid, pressing down on Ariel with physical weight. The crown of thorns blazed so bright she had to close her eyes against the glare. And then the moon spoke. Not in words, in feeling, in knowing, in absolute certainty that flowed directly into Ariel's consciousness. Every moment of her life was laid bare, examined, judged. The moon saw everything, her childhood kindness and her adolescent cruelties, her genuine love for Seraphine and the moments she'd resented her sister's existence, her desire for justice and the part of her that wanted revenge. She saw Ariel's soul in its entirety and demanded an accounting. Why do you deserve this power? The question echoed through Ariel's mind, and she knew that everyone in the courtyard could hear it too. This was the trial, not just of her actions, but of her character. Her right to stand as keeper of bonds. "I don't deserve it," Ariel said aloud, her voice steady despite the crushing pressure. "No one deserves power. We either earn it through our choices, or we corrupt it through our failures. And which have you done?" "Both." The admission hurt, but it was true. "I've made mistakes. I've been cruel when I should have been kind, judgmental when I should have been understanding. I've wanted revenge against people who hurt me, wanted to use my power to make them suffer as I suffered." Gasps from the watching crowd. Theron's smile widened. But Ariel wasn't finished. "I've also shown mercy when it wasn't deserved. I saved my sister's life even though she tried to destroy mine. I offered truth to people who wanted comfortable lies. And I'm willing to submit to your judgment now, even knowing it might kill me, because the alternative is letting fear and corruption win." The moonlight pulsed, digging deeper. "You claim to be keeper of bonds. Show me the truth of every bond you've touched." This was the real test. Ariel raised her hands, and silver light exploded from her palms. Every bond she'd ever examined materialized in the air above the courtyard, visible to everyone, undeniable. There was her bond with Noah, golden and true, formed not through magic, but through genuine soul-deep recognition. There was the corrupted bond between Noah and Seraphine, green and sickly, woven from stolen blood and desperate deception. There were the bonds Theron had manufactured over 50 years, false alliances, compelled loyalties, connections maintained through fear rather than choice. Dozens of them, spreading out like a spider's web, all traced back to him. And there were the bonds Ariel had examined, but left untouched, the ones that were genuine even if she disagreed with them, the connections she could have broken but chose to respect because they were real. The evidence was overwhelming. Undeniable. Theron's face went white, then red with fury. She's manipulating the vision. Using her power to fabricate. Silence. The moon's voice was absolute, and Theron actually stumbled backward, his protest dying in his throat. The bonds shown are true. The Lunarii has used her power justly, has shown mercy when warranted, has submitted to judgment rather than claiming it for herself. She is worthy. The moonlight shifted, and suddenly Ariel could see Theron's bonds too, not just the ones he created, but the ones woven into his own soul. And what she saw made her stomach turn. He was corrupted through and through. Had been using dark magic for years, long before Seraphine ever discovered it. Had orchestrated the Lunarii purge not to protect the pack, but to eliminate the only wolves who could expose what he'd become. And he'd been planning this trial from the moment Ariel awakened. Had been waiting for the perfect moment to destroy her, to eliminate the threat she posed to his carefully maintained power structure. The moon saw it all. And she was not pleased. "Counselor Theron, you stand accused not by the Lunarii, but by your own bonds. By the corruption you've woven into the very fabric of pack society. How do you answer?" Theron tried to speak, tried to defend himself. But the moonlight was pressing down on him now, forcing him to his knees, compelling truth the same way it had compelled it from Ariel. "I did what was necessary," he gasped out. The Linearii were dangerous. The pack needed justice. You gave them control. There is a difference. The moonlight blazed brighter and Theron screamed. Ariel watched, horrified and fascinated in equal measure, as the moon did to Theron what she'd done to Seraphine, carved away the corruption, exposed every lie, stripped away every false bond he'd ever created. But where Seraphine had been redeemable, where some core of humanity had remained beneath the shadows, Theron had nothing left. The corruption wasn't something he'd acquired, it was all he was. When the moonlight finally faded, Theron collapsed to the ground. Still breathing. Still alive. But completely severed from the pack bond. From every connection that had made him part of the community. He would live, but he would live alone, unable to feel the presence of other wolves, unable to form new bonds or connections. A punishment far worse than death for a wolf. Let this be known, the moon's voice rang out one final time. The Linearii are my chosen. They stand in judgment not to seize power, but to ensure it is used justly. Any who seek to harm them without cause will face my wrath directly. The moonlight faded to normal levels, and Ariel collapsed to her knees, gasping. The crown of thorns retracted, settling back against her skull in dormant form. For a moment, the courtyard was absolutely silent. Then Noah was there, having vaulted over the ward barrier the moment it dropped, pulling her into his arms. You did it, he whispered fiercely. Moon's mercy, you actually did it. We did it, Ariel corrected. Through the mate bond, she'd felt his support every second, anchoring her to reality even when the moon's judgment felt like it would tear her apart. Together. Around them, the crowd was erupting into chaos. Some wolves were celebrating, the corruption exposed, justice served. Others looked terrified, wondering how many more false bonds would be revealed, how much of their carefully ordered world was built on lies. And at the center of it all, Cashin was efficiently organizing guards to remove Theron's unconscious form and restore order. But Ariel only had eyes for Noah. For her mate, who'd trusted her through yet another impossible trial, who'd let her face danger even when every instinct screamed at him to intervene. No more trials, she said. Please tell me that's the last one. Noah's laugh was shaky with relief. I'll put it in writing. No more trials, no more life-threatening situations, no more grand gestures that nearly get you killed. Good. Ariel leaned her forehead against his. Because I have a claiming ceremony to prepare for, and I'd like to actually survive long enough to attend it. Through the mate bond, she felt his love surge so strong it nearly overwhelmed her. And beneath it, fierce possessive pride that she'd faced the moon herself and emerged victorious. She was his. He was hers. And now the entire pack knew it beyond any shadow of doubt. The claiming ceremony was supposed to happen in 2 days. It happened in 2 hours. Because while the council was still reeling from Theron's exposure, while guards were escorting the disgraced counselor to the dungeons, while pack members whispered and wondered what other lies would be revealed, someone made their move. Ariel felt it through the bonds before anyone else could react. A surge of dark magic, similar to what Seraphine had wielded, but different somehow. Older. More controlled. And it was coming from the healing ward where Seraphine was being held under guard. No, Ariel breathed, already moving. She's not alone. She was never working alone. Noah was beside her instantly, both of them running through the corridors of the council hall toward the medical wing. Behind them, Cashin shouted orders, mobilizing guards, but Ariel knew they'd be too late. Whoever was behind this had been waiting for exactly this moment, when the pack's attention was divided, when their defenses were focused on Theron's arrest, when no one was watching the supposedly powerless prisoner in the healing ward. They burst through the doors to find carnage. The guards who'd been stationed outside Seraphine's room were dead, their throats torn out with surgical precision. Shadow magic residue stained the walls, and the door to her room hung off its hinges. Inside, Seraphine stood in the center of a ritual circle drawn in blood. She looked different than she had 3 days ago, stronger, healthier, her skin no longer gray. And standing beside her was a woman Ariel had never seen before. She was ancient, this woman. Not in appearance, she looked maybe 40, with sharp features and hair so black it seemed to absorb light. But her eyes held centuries, and the power radiating from her made Ariel's newly awakened abilities feel like a candle next to a wildfire. "Hello, daughter of Oriel's blood," the woman said, her voice smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. "I've been waiting a very long time to meet the last Linearii." The crown of thorns materialized on Ariel's head, thorns extending in warning. "Who are you?" "I have many names, but you may call me Morgana." The woman smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd already won. "I'm the one who taught your sister shadow magic. The one who orchestrated the Linearii purge 2 centuries ago. The one who's been waiting very patiently for one of your bloodline to awaken so I could finally finish what I started." Ariel's blood went cold. Through the crown's knowledge, fragments of information surfaced, whispers of a wolf who'd turned against her own kind, who'd mastered shadow magic so completely that she'd become something other than wolf. Something that fed on corruption and chaos. "You're the original shadow mage," Ariel said. "The one the council thought they'd killed during the purge." "They tried." Morgana's smile widened. "But I learned long ago that death is just another state of being to transcend. I've been existing in the spaces between, neither fully alive nor truly dead, feeding on the corruption I planted throughout Pack society. Every false bond, every manufactured alliance, every Lytheran and others like him perpetuated. I've been draining power from them for decades." She gestured, and the ritual circle beneath Seraphine's feet blazed with dark light. "And now, thanks to your sister's desperate desire for power, I finally have what I need to become corporeal again. To walk the world in flesh instead of shadow. All I needed was a Linearii to awaken, because your power, daughter of the moon, is the perfect catalyst for my resurrection." Noah moved to stand beside Ariel, his presence solid and unwavering. "You're not taking her." "I don't need to take her, Alpha King." Morgana's expression was almost pitying. "I just need her to die. You see, when a Linearii dies, their power doesn't dissipate, it returns to the moon, waiting for the next of the bloodline to awaken. But if there is no next bloodline," she spread her hands, "that power becomes untethered. Available for someone with the right knowledge to claim." "You want to steal Linearii magic," Ariel said, pieces clicking into place. "That's why you orchestrated the purge. You killed every Linearii except my bloodline because you needed one to survive, to carry the power forward until you were ready to claim it." "Very good." Morgana looked genuinely pleased. "Your ancestor Oriel was clever. She hid your family so well that even I couldn't find you for 2 centuries. But then your sister, sweet desperate Seraphine, started asking the right questions. Started looking in the right forbidden texts. And I was able to reach out, to guide her, to use her obsession with power to bring about exactly this moment." Seraphine looked sick, her face pale as she realized the full extent of how she'd been manipulated. "You said you'd make me powerful." "You said?" "I said what you wanted to hear." Morgana's tone was dismissive. "You were always just a tool, child. A means to an end. And now that end has arrived." The ritual circle pulsed, and shadow beasts began materializing around them. Not the mindless creatures from Black Fang, these were organized, intelligent, moving with coordinated precision. They formed a barrier between Ariel and the exit, cutting off any chance of escape. Through the mate bond, Ariel felt Noah calculating odds, counting enemies, preparing to shift and fight. But she also felt his resignation. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and facing an enemy who'd had 2 centuries to prepare for this confrontation. "There's one thing you didn't account for," Ariel said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her veins. "Oh." Morgana raised an eyebrow. "Do tell." "I'm not just a Linearii." Ariel reached for Noah's hand, and the mate bond blazed gold between them. "I'm a Linearii who's mated to the Alpha King." Our bond is recognized by the moon herself. And that changes everything. She learned this in Oriel's journal, in the passages about true mate bonds, and how they amplified Lunarii abilities. A bonded Lunarii wasn't just an individual with power, they became a conduit for their mate's strength as well, the two of them creating something greater than either could achieve alone. The crown pulsed, and suddenly Ariel could feel Noah's alpha authority flowing through their bond. Not just his power, but the collective strength of every wolf who'd sworn genuine loyalty to him, every true bond in the pack territories, every connection that was real and unforced. It was vast, overwhelming, more power than Ariel had ever imagined channeling. Interesting, Morgana said, and for the first time, she looked uncertain. But ultimately irrelevant. You're still one Lunarii against 2 centuries of accumulated shadow magic. You can't possibly. Ariel didn't wait for her to finish. Silver light exploded from her hands, but this time it was different. Stronger. Amplified by the mate bond into something that made the walls of the healing ward crack and the shadow beasts recoil. She reached out through the network of bonds, through every connection she could feel across the capital, and she pulled. Every wolf who'd ever been bound by false loyalty felt it, the sudden, shocking freedom as those corrupted bonds shattered. Every manufactured alliance, every compelled connection, every lie that Morgana had been feeding on for decades, Ariel tore them all apart simultaneously. The backlash was cataclysmic. Morgana screamed, her form flickering between solid and shadow as the power she'd been siphoning suddenly reversed, flowing back to its sources. The shadow beasts dissolved into smoke. The ritual circle beneath Seraphine's feet shattered. But Morgana wasn't finished. 2 centuries of existence had taught her how to adapt, how to survive. She turned her attention to the one source of power Ariel couldn't touch, Seraphine herself. If I can't drain the Lunarii, Morgana snarled, I'll settle for the sister who invited me in. Dark tendrils shot from Morgana's hands, wrapping around Seraphine before anyone could react. Ariel's sister screamed as shadow magic began consuming her, draining her life force to fuel Morgana's corporeal form. And Ariel faced the same choice she'd faced 3 days ago. Let her sister die. The woman who'd betrayed her, imprisoned her, tried to erase her from existence, or risk everything to save someone who probably didn't deserve saving. It wasn't even a choice. Noah, Ariel said quietly, I need you to trust me one more time. Through the mate bond, she felt his instant understanding. His absolute faith that she knew what she was doing. His readiness to give her whatever she needed. Always, he said. Ariel drew on their bond, on his alpha authority, on the collective power of every true connection in the pack, and she channeled it all into one devastating strike. But she didn't aim at Morgana. She aimed at Seraphine. Silver light pierced through the shadow magic consuming her sister, and for a heartbeat, everyone froze. Then Ariel twisted her power, using it not to harm but to sever, cutting the connection between Morgana and Seraphine with surgical precision. The shadow mage howled in fury as her lifeline was severed, her corporeal form beginning to unravel. You fool! You've damned us both. Without a vessel, my power will return to the shadows where it belongs, Ariel finished. You were never meant to exist in this world, Morgana. You're an aberration, a corruption, a wound in the fabric of pack society. And I'm the moon's executioner. This is what I was made for. The crown blazed so bright it was impossible to look at directly. Ariel felt the moon's presence, not distant or abstract, but immediate and absolute. And she felt the moon's will flowing through her. Execute justice. Ariel raised both hands, and every ounce of power she possessed, her own Lunarii magic, Noah's alpha authority, the collective strength of the pack, the moon's blessing itself, converged into a single point of brilliant silver light. You wanted Lunarii power? Ariel's voice rang with divine authority. Let me show you what it actually means to bear the moon's judgment. The light struck Morgana's center mass. There was no explosion, no dramatic disintegration. The shadow mage simply ceased. The corruption that had sustained her for 2 centuries dissolved like morning mist, and what remained was just a ghost, a memory of a wolf who'd chosen power over pack, who'd traded her soul for immortality and found only emptiness. For a moment, the ghost of Morgana stared at Ariel with something that might have been regret. Then she faded completely, returning to whatever darkness had spawned her. The healing ward fell silent. Seraphine collapsed to the floor, unconscious but breathing. The shadow magic was gone, burned away by Ariel's intervention. She'd live, probably with more psychological scars, probably facing years of consequences for her choices, but she'd live. Ariel swayed on her feet, exhausted beyond measure. She'd channeled more power in the last 10 minutes than most wolves used in a lifetime. The crown of thorns retracted, and she felt it settling deeper into her consciousness, becoming more integrated with who she was. Noah caught her before she could fall, pulling her against his chest. "Is it over?" he asked quietly. "Please tell me it's actually over this time." Ariel reached through the bonds, searching for any remaining corruption, any hidden threats. But all she felt was clean connections, genuine bonds, true alliances, the pack structure reforming itself into something healthier than it had been in centuries. "It's over," she confirmed. Morgana was the source. Everything else, Theron's corruption, Seraphine's shadow magic, all of it, was just symptoms of the disease she'd planted. With her gone, the pack can finally heal. Guards were flooding into the healing ward now, Cashin at their lead, taking in the destruction with wide eyes. But when he saw Noah and Ariel standing in the center of it all, unharmed, relief washed over his face. "Please tell me we don't have to deal with any more ancient shadow mages," Cashin said. "No more shadow mages," Ariel promised. "Just the normal amount of political intrigue and pack drama. I can work with normal." Cashin's smile was tired but genuine. He gestured to the guards. "Get healers for Seraphine. And someone find the council. Tell them the Alpha King and his mate require their presence immediately." "His mate?" one of the guards questioned. "His mate," Noah confirmed, his arm tightening around Ariel's waist. His eyes blazed with possessive intensity as he looked down at her. "And anyone who has a problem with that can take it up with the moon herself. I'm done waiting. Done with political maneuvering. Done pretending." He turned to face the assembled guards, his alpha authority radiating through every word. "Ariel is my true mate, chosen by the moon and confirmed through trial. The claiming ceremony will happen tonight, not in 2 days, not when it's convenient for the council, but right now. Anyone who wishes to witness is welcome. Anyone who wishes to object can leave the capital before moonrise." A shiver ran down Ariel's spine. This was Noah as she'd never seen him, not the calculating politician or the conflicted king, but the alpha in his full power, making a declaration that no one would dare challenge. "But your majesty," one of the braver guards ventured, "the preparations, the traditional protocols can be handled afterward." Noah's tone left no room for argument. "My mate just saved the entire pack from 2 centuries of corruption. She's earned the right to be claimed on her own terms, not according to protocols designed by the same council that tried to execute her." Through the mate bond, Ariel felt his determination, his absolute refusal to wait another moment. And beneath it, the fear he'd been suppressing, the terror that if they delayed, something else would go wrong, some other threat would emerge, and he'd lose her before he could make their bond public and undeniable. "Tonight," she agreed softly, looking up at him. "Let's do it tonight." Noah's smile was fierce, relieved, utterly devoted. Tonight. They didn't use the formal ceremonial grounds. Instead, Noah led Ariel to the highest tower of the council hall, where a platform opened to the sky. The full moon hung directly overhead, so bright it cast shadows, so close it felt like they could reach up and touch it. Word spread through the capital with supernatural speed. By the time Ariel and Noah climbed to the platform, hundreds of wolves had gathered below, looking up, bearing witness. The councils stood in formal ranks, their expressions ranging from supportive to wary to resigned. Cassian stood beside them as witness, and to Ariel's surprise, so did several pack leaders from surrounding territories who'd come for her trial and stayed for the aftermath. No traditional robes, Noah said, taking both her hands. No ceremonial speeches. Just us, the moon, and the truth. Just us, Ariel echoed. The claiming ritual was ancient, predating even the council. Noah spoke the old words, the ones that called upon the moon to witness and bless their union. Ariel responded with her own vows, feeling the mate bond strengthen and solidify with each promise. Then Noah bit her, the claiming mark, placed at the junction of her neck and shoulder. The bond that would tell every wolf who looked at her exactly who she belonged to. Ariel bit him in return, her mark mirroring his. Alpha King and Lunarii, mated and bonded, their power intertwining into something neither had possessed alone. The moon's light intensified, bathing them both in silver brilliance. And every wolf in the capital felt it, the rightness of this bond, the way it strengthened rather than weakened both of them, the promise of something better than what had come before. When the light faded, Noah pulled Ariel into a kiss that was witnessed by hundreds and cared for by no one but them. It tasted like forever and new beginnings and the end of running. They broke apart to cheers from the gathered crowd. Even the most skeptical council members looked moved. Behold, Cassian's voice rang out, Noah Blackthorn, Alpha King, and Ariel Shadowmere, his true mate and keeper of bonds. Let any who would challenge their union speak now or accept them as rightful leaders of our pack. Silence. Not even Theron's former supporters dared object. Noah turned to address the crowd, but he kept one arm firmly around Ariel, keeping her close. The old ways are done. Manufactured bonds, false alliances, corruption masked as tradition, all of it ends tonight. From this day forward, every position of power will be verified by the keeper of bonds. Every alliance will be tested for truth. And any who attempt to subvert the system will answer to both of us. It was a declaration of war against corruption itself. And from the fierce approval Ariel felt through the bonds below, the pack was ready for it. She stepped forward, the crown of thorns manifesting on her head one final time. I am Lunarii, the moon's chosen executioner. But I don't execute through death, I execute through truth. I will be your keeper, your conscience, your reminder that power is a responsibility, not a right. And I will stand beside your Alpha King, not as his subject, but as his equal. The crowd erupted into genuine celebration this time. Whatever fear or suspicion had lingered after the trials dissolved in the face of this moment, an Alpha King and his Lunarii mate, standing together, promising a future built on truth instead of lies. As the celebration continued below, Noah leaned down to whisper in Ariel's ear. Ready to change the world? Ariel looked out over the capital, feeling the bonds shifting and reforming, healing and strengthening. She thought about the girl she'd been before Blackfang, naive, powerful but unsure, trying to navigate a system designed to contain her. That girl was gone. In her place stood the moon's executioner, crowned in silver thorns, mated to an Alpha King and absolutely certain of her purpose. I was born ready, she said. And together, they descended from the tower to begin the work of rebuilding a pack that had been broken for 2 centuries. The moon watched over them, satisfied. Her chosen had proven worthy, and the world would never be the same. 3 months later, Ariel stood at the window of the tower chamber that had become her workspace, watching the sun set over the capital. The city looked different now, cleaner somehow, lighter, as if removing 2 centuries of corruption had lifted a physical weight from the stones themselves. Behind her, spread across a massive table, lay the evidence of the work they'd been doing. Maps of packed territories with bonds marked in different colors, gold for true connections, gray for those that needed examination, and the occasional red flag marking corruption that still lingered in the outer regions. It turned out that Morgana's influence had spread farther than anyone realized. The door opened without a knock, Only one person had that privilege, and Noah entered carrying 2 cups of tea. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes from yet another late-night council session, but his smile when he saw her was pure sunlight. "Still working?" he asked, setting 1 cup beside her and wrapping his free arm around her waist from behind. "Always." Ariel leaned back against his chest, accepting the comfort of his presence. "I found another cluster of false bonds in the Eastern Territories. Looks like one of Theron's protégés survived the purge and has been quietly building their own power base." Noah's sigh ruffled her hair. "There's always one more, isn't there? Welcome to the life of a keeper of bonds." But Ariel smiled as she said it. This was exactly the work she'd been meant to do, not ruling, not commanding, but watching. Ensuring that power was wielded justly, that bonds were genuine, that the mistakes of the past didn't repeat themselves. "Seraphine's trial is tomorrow," Noah said quietly. Ariel's smile faded. Her sister had been recovering in a secured healing facility for 3 months, undergoing both physical and psychological treatment. The council wanted her executed for treason. Ariel had argued for exile instead, a punishment, yes, but not death. It had been the source of their biggest fight since the claiming ceremony. "I know." Ariel turned in Noah's arms to face him. "And I know you think I'm being too lenient. That she deserves worse for what she did." "I think she tried to destroy you," Noah corrected, his voice tight. "I think she orchestrated months of torture, tried to erase you from existence, and nearly got you killed multiple times. And I think letting her walk away sends the wrong message about accountability. Exile isn't walking away." Ariel's hands came up to rest on his chest. "It's losing everything: pack, family, the ability to form bonds or connections. She'll spend the rest of her life alone, unable to feel what it means to be Wolf." "That's not mercy, Noah. That's a different kind of death." Through the mate bond, she felt his frustration warring with his understanding. He wanted Seraphine to pay in blood for what she'd done to Ariel, but he also trusted Ariel's judgment as keeper of bonds. The conflict between those 2 truths was tearing him apart. "What if she comes back?" Noah asked. "What if exile isn't enough and she finds a way to threaten you again?" "Then we'll deal with it." Ariel's voice was firm. "Together. Like we deal with everything else. But I won't become the kind of leader who executes people just because they might be a future threat. That's the thinking that led to the Linearii genocide. That's the path to becoming what we're trying to prevent." Noah closed his eyes, resting his forehead against hers. "You're right. I know you're right. But if something happens to you because I let her live, it won't be because you let her live. It'll be because she made choices." Ariel's hands slid up to cup his face. "I need you to trust me on this. The same way you trusted me with the moon judgment, with facing Morgana, with everything else. Trust that I know how to balance justice with mercy." "I do trust you." Noah's arms tightened around her. I love you so much it terrifies me. The thought of losing you after everything we fought to be together." "I know." Ariel kissed him softly. "I love you too. And I'm not going anywhere." The moment hung between them, tender and fragile and absolutely real. Then Noah's expression shifted, something playful entering his storm-gray eyes. "Speaking of not going anywhere," he said, "the council has started making noises about heirs. Apparently, having an Alpha King mated to the last Linearii makes everyone very interested in the possibility of children who inherit both bloodlines." Ariel's laugh was startled. "We've been mated for 3 months. I know. I told them they could wait at least a year before they started pressuring us." Noah's smile turned wicked. "But I thought you should be warned that your reproductive choices are now apparently a matter of state interest." "Wonderful." Ariel rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. "What did you tell them?" "That when and if we decide to have children, it'll be our decision and no one else's. And that any council member who brought it up again would find themselves undergoing a very thorough bond verification by my mate." "I'm sure that went over well." They shut up immediately. Noah's expression turned serious. "But in all honesty, Ariel, Is that something you want? Eventually? Because I know we haven't talked about it, and with everything that's been happening. Ariel considered the question. A year ago, she would have said yes without hesitation. But that was before Blafong, before awakening, before she understood the full weight of what being Linearii meant. I don't know, she admitted. Part of me wants it, wants to see what a child of our bond would be like, wants to give the Linearii bloodline a future beyond just me. But another part of me worries about bringing a child into this world when we're still rebuilding it. When there are still threats lurking in the shadows. Then we wait, Noah said simply. Until you're sure. Until the world feels safe enough. There's no rush, Ariel. We have time. The certainty in his voice made her chest ache. How did I get so lucky? She whispered. Lucky? Noah's laugh was disbelieving. You were thrown into a prison designed to kill you, had your entire identity stolen, faced trial by the moon herself, and fought a 200-year-old shadow mage. I'd say luck had very little to do with your survival. No, Ariel shook her head. I'm lucky because I found you. Because when the world tried to erase me, you remembered. Because you trusted me enough to let me face danger on my own terms instead of trying to protect me from everything. Noah's eyes softened. I'll always trust you, even when it terrifies me. They stood there in the growing darkness, holding each other, the mate bond pulsing steadily between them. Outside, the capital was settling into evening routines, wolves heading home, families gathering for meals, children playing in courtyards that had once been stained with corruption. It wasn't perfect. There was still work to do, still bonds to verify, still threats to face. But it was better, cleaner, more honest. And Ariel had helped make it that way. A knock at the door interrupted the moment. Cashin entered, his expression apologetic. Sorry to interrupt, but we have a situation. Northern Territory Alpha is refusing bond verification. Says the Keeper of Bonds has no authority over his pack. Ariel sighed, stepping out of Noah's embrace, but keeping their hands linked. Let me guess, he's one of Theron's old allies? Former council supporter, yes. He's claiming that the new system is an overreach of central authority, that individual packs should govern themselves without interference. Classic. Ariel moved to the table, studying the map. The northern territories were marked in gray bonds she hadn't verified yet because the local alpha kept finding excuses to delay her visits. He's hiding something. Probably multiple false bonds that he knows won't survive scrutiny. What do you want to do? Noah asked. Ariel felt the weight of the crown, dormant but present, always there now, integrated so completely into her consciousness that she couldn't separate where it ended and she began. She thought about Oriel, about all the Linearii who'd come before her, about the responsibility she'd accepted when she put on the crown of thorns. We go there, she said firmly. Tomorrow, after Seraphine's trial. We make it clear that bond verification isn't optional, it's the price of being part of the pack system. And if this alpha won't submit voluntarily, we'll have to consider whether his pack belongs under central governance at all. It was a hard line, the kind of decision that would make enemies. But it was also necessary. Because if they let one alpha refuse verification, others would follow. And everything they'd fought to build would crumble. I'll arrange the transport, Cashin said, nodding approval. After he left, Noah turned to Ariel with an expression of mingled pride and concern. You're sure about this? Forcing the issue could trigger a territorial dispute. I'm sure. Ariel's voice was steady. The whole point of having a Keeper of Bonds is to ensure that power is legitimate. If we back down the first time someone challenges that authority, we're admitting the position is toothless. Then we stand together. Noah's hand found hers again. Whatever comes. Whatever comes, Ariel echoed. The next evening, after Seraphine's trial, after Ariel had stood before the council and argued for exile instead of execution, after Noah had reluctantly supported her decision, after her sister had been led away to the border territories with orders never to return, Ariel found herself alone in the tower again. The sun was setting in shades of blood and gold, painting the capital in colors that reminded her of the night she'd first awakened. The night everything changed. She touched the place on her neck where Noah's claiming mark sat, feeling the mate bond pulse in response. Felt the crown resting dormant beneath her skin, ready to manifest the moment she needed it. Felt the network of bonds spreading out across the territories, so many connections, genuine and false, strong and fragile, all of them her responsibility to guard. It was overwhelming. Exhausting. More than anyone should have to carry. But she'd choose it again. 1,000 times over, she'd choose this path. Because the alternative, a world where power went unchecked, where bonds were manufactured, where people like her were hunted to extinction for daring to speak truth, that alternative was unacceptable. Ariel? She turned to find Noah in the doorway, backlit by lamplight, looking at her with an expression that was equal parts concern and love. Just thinking, she said. About how we got here. About the girl who walked into Black Fong prison thinking she'd die there. About how she survived and became this. Ariel gestured to herself, to the crown she bore, the mark on her neck, the power thrumming beneath her skin. Sometimes I still can't believe it's real. Noah crossed the room to her, pulling her into an embrace that felt like coming home. It's real. You're real. And you're exactly where you're meant to be. Even though the path was terrible, Ariel's voice was small. Even though I had to lose everything before I could find myself? Especially then. Noah pulled back to look at her. Because you didn't let the terrible things break you. You let them forge you into something stronger. Something the world desperately needed. Ariel's eyes burned with unshed tears. I couldn't have done it without you. Yes, you could have. Noah's voice was absolutely certain. But you didn't have to. That's the difference. They stood there as darkness fell completely, as the moon rose full and silver overhead, as the capital settled into night. Tomorrow they'd face new challenges, the Northern Alpha, the ongoing verification process, the constant work of rebuilding a system that had been corrupt for centuries. But tonight, they were just two people who'd found each other against impossible odds. Who'd survived betrayal and trials and ancient enemies. Who'd chosen to stand together when the world tried to tear them apart. And that was enough. Would you have chosen her? Think about it, really think about it. A girl thrown into a prison designed to break her. Abandoned by her family, betrayed by her sister, condemned by the very king who was supposed to be her mate. A girl who should have died in Black Fang, who should have let the despair consume her, who should have emerged broken and bitter and focused only on revenge. Would you have chosen to save her sister after everything Seraphine did? Would you have argued for exile instead of execution, knowing that mercy might be mistaken for weakness? Would you have stood before the moon herself and submitted to judgment, risking everything on the belief that truth would prevail? Would you have faced a 200-year-old shadow mage to protect a pack that had tried to erase you from existence? Or would you have chosen the easier path? The one that prioritized survival over justice, revenge over mercy, self-preservation over the exhausting work of rebuilding a broken system? Ariel chose the hard way. Every single time. She chose to trust when trust seemed foolish. To show mercy when vengeance would have been justified. To stand in judgment knowing that judgment might destroy her. And in doing so, she became exactly what the Lunarii were always meant to be, not tyrants wielding power over others, but guardians ensuring that power served justice instead of corruption. But here's the truth that keeps me awake at night. She's still just one woman. One Lunarii standing against centuries of entrenched corruption. And the work she started? It's far from finished. Because while Morgana is gone, while Theron is imprisoned, while Seraphine is exiled, the system that allowed them to flourish still has cracks. Still has wolves who benefited from the old ways and resent the new ones. Still has territories where false bonds persist, where corruption festers in dark corners, waiting for the keeper of bonds to make a mistake. And Ariel knows this. Feels it through every connection she monitors, every bond she verifies, Every night she lies awake wondering if she's strong enough to finish what she started. The crown of thorns isn't just a symbol of power, it's a reminder that leadership comes with pain. That standing for truth means standing alone sometimes. That being the moon's executioner means carrying the weight of judgment without ever being certain you're making the right choice. So I'll ask you again, would you choose her? Would you choose the woman who refuses to let corruption stand unchallenged, even when challenging it puts her life at risk? Would you choose the leader who shows mercy to enemies, who argues for exile instead of execution, who believes that even the worst of us deserve a chance at redemption? Would you choose the mate who stands beside an alpha king as his equal, who refuses to be protected or diminished, who demands that power be wielded justly no matter the cost? Because that's who Ariel is. That's who she chose to become. And the world she's building, the one where bonds are true, where power serves justice, where even the forgotten can rise to claim their destiny, that world needs people to believe in it, to fight for it, to choose it, the way Ariel chose it, even when the choosing hurt. If this story lit something inside you, if Ariel's journey from prisoner to executioner to queen resonated with something deep in your soul, then do me a favor. Hit that subscribe button for Shayla's Romance Library. Because here, we don't tell stories about perfect people who never struggle. We tell stories about women who are thrown into impossible situations and choose to rise anyway. About love that isn't easy but is absolutely worth fighting for. About power that comes not from dominance, but from the courage to stand for truth when everyone else is comfortable with lies. We tell stories that burn. And if you're the kind of person who believes that even the most broken among us can become something magnificent, that betrayal doesn't have to destroy us, that love can survive anything if both people choose to fight for it, that one woman with enough determination can change an entire world, then you belong here. With Ariel. With Noah. With every wolf who chose truth over comfort, justice over corruption, love over fear. So subscribe. Join us. And let's find out together what happens when the forgotten rise, when the executioner claims her crown, when the world realizes that some fires can't be extinguished. They can only burn brighter. Welcome to Shayla's Romance Library, where love isn't just a feeling, it's a revolution.